Okay, good afternoon, everyone. We're going to go into finance. The motion is going to finance and open the meeting. We're going to start with the roll call. Roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Here.
Councilor Calorio?
Here.
Councilor Haji?
Here.
Councilor King? Councilor Merrill Carlson?
Here.
Councilor Nguyen?
Here.
Councilor Rivera?
Here.
Councilor Rose?
Here.
Councilor Russell?
Here.
Councilor Toomey?
Here.
And Mayor Petty.
Here, so we have the approval of the minutes is on here, so all those in favor, opposed, so ordered. We'll go with the budget presentation by the city manager. Mr. Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm going to go through the presentation, and this year's presentation, we'll try to do the best we can to try to articulate a lot of the challenges, but also the opportunities ahead of us in fiscal year 2024. And so this year's theme, it's one of the things that we've been talking a lot about throughout the year, especially since I came on. And believe it or not, in a few weeks, it's been a year since I was appointed acting city manager. So just sit back and see how fast the year goes by. And so this year's basically title and what theme that we've created for the budget is Empowering Progress. We want to invest in equity and talent and culture in the city, which involves a lot of internal improvements, whether it's departments, cost of living increases, et cetera. The next slide here basically represents a breakdown of how the budget, this year's budget, is broken down by departments, which includes education. It breaks it down by some of the fixed costs that we endure as a city. And right now, this year, the budget that we're presenting is $848 million, which is a 6% increase over fiscal year 2023. And in the fixed cost, the way it's broken down is about $507 million goes to education, $42 million for debt service, $38 million for pensions, $32 million for health insurance, $18 million for financial integrity plan, $10 million for pension obligation bonds. Now, there's two areas that will kind of depict here in the budget that we've prioritized. And those two areas are as such. It's COLAs, cost of living increase, and we're estimating about a 3%, and that's what we've planned for in this budget, and then about $3 million for new technologies. And one of the shifts of the new technologies is that historically a lot of the technology needs has been addressed through capital funds. But unfortunately, moving forward, a lot of the technology needs are subscription-based, and when they're subscription-based, it impacts our operational dollars. So in the next slide, when we look at the FY24 budget revenue assumptions, this is the way they're broken down. We're looking at state aid, a governor's budget, with a 14.4% increase in education funding. That's roughly a $46.5 million increase. And there's about a 1.6% increase in local aid, which is about $800,000. When we look at another source of revenue is property tax levy. And we're assuming about a 4.6% increase in property tax levy. 9.6 million it's in the Prop 2.5, and 6.5 million is in new growth. And then we're also assuming a $0.5 million, about a $500,000 reduction in our overlay. The third source of revenue for the city is local receipts. That one we're expecting a 4% increase from last year to this year. And those increases are, as you see here, in investment income, licenses and permits, trash collection revenue, entertainment, which is hotels and meals. And you see the breakdown here in the pie in the chart presented to you. When you look at the FY24 revenues, and we look at increases, particularly to each one, property tax, 4.6%, $375 million. State aid for the city is a 1.6% increase. Education aid is the highest at 14.4% increase. And then our local receipts is a little bit of a decrease when you look at the adjustments of revenue that we've made some adjustments on that related to ARPA dollars. For FY24 expenses, we're looking at a $507.4 million education. It's 11% increase from previous years. It's a negative 1% decrease in fixed costs, a negative 0.4% decrease in public safety, a 3% increase in public works, and a negative 6% decrease in other city operations. And these are related to our FY24 expenses. Now, on the next slide here, it gives you a little bit of a breakdown of kind of how the Worcester Public Schools and the foundation budget and local spending is factored. So when we look at education, education is about 60% of the city's overall budget. So it depicts the significant investment in education from the city. FY23 to FY24, we see a City of Worcester budget increase about 5.9%, while the education budget has increased 11.3% for year over year. The foundation budget, when we look at the foundation budget at the state level, that has increased $98 million, which is a 25.94% increase over the last 5 years. And our local contribution has also increased a $16 million, which is about 15.72% over the last 5 years as well. In the Worcester Public Schools budget, that increased as accumulated to about $93 million, which is 25.2% over the last 5 years. And the Worcester Public Schools budget increased this year $45.8 million in FY24, which is a $6.1 million more, of which is additional local contribution on the city side to education. So when you look at the last 5 years, from FY18 to FY22, the city has provided about $22 million over next school spending and about $122 million in excess contributions to the school department. Those some other selected other contributions between FY20 and FY23, you see here is $12 million in CARES Act funding, $10 million in ARPA, 88 commitments, $59.3 million in debt service, $10 million in Worcester Public Schools supportive OPEB liability contributions, and then $2.3 million in utility support. And as you can see in the graph, you'll see the increasing. And again, this just shows the investment of this body, the city council, administration, the state, in supporting public schools, and especially the Worcester Public Schools over the past 5 years. And FY24, this is a breakdown of the operating and capital expenditures. On the left side, you see the operating budget, and that is broken down, as you can see by the pie chart. Education funding is 507, municipal funding is about 325, and then education-related debt service, you're looking at about $15 million in debt service. And that's primarily due to capital improvements in the schools and building new schools. In the FY24 capital borrowing, budget borrowing, you look at how we borrow as a city and how that pie is broken down. And you can see it's roughly a third. Municipal-related borrowings, about $46 million. Education-related borrowings is roughly $54 million. And enterprise-related borrowing is at $60 million. In our fixed costs, this is a breakdown of how our $156.6 million breakdown for our FY24 fixed cost breakdown. The biggest here, and you can see in the pie chart, is pension. It's at 24%, and debt service is 27%. Those two big factors play a big role in our fixed costs that we have to make sure that we're supporting and funding every single year. And then it's broken down. The next larger pie is health insurance, and then you see the financial integrity plan as well. On the next slide here, you start to see the breakdown for specifically to our departments. FY24 city departments breakdown and some of the changes that you'll see in the departments. The biggest changes you'll see is diversity, equity, inclusion, the investment on DEI here in the city, the restructuring and shifting of positions and staffing and divisions into this department has created about a 67.1% increase into that department. Elections, you will see a 33.2% increase. Elections, they're taking on bigger responsibilities, more polls across the city, and they're actually doing 3 elections this year. So you'll see an increase in that. Economic development, this includes the CPA position, but also shifting certain departments and divisions into that department. Innovation and technology. One of the biggest increases there is what I mentioned earlier, the need to fund operational technology softwares through operational dollars, not capital dollars. And so that plays a significant role, and a big part of that is the ERP system. On the city clerk's office, you'll see a 21.5% increase. Law, insurance, and court judgments. We've made a significant increase in the law department. We've needed to make adjustments in their salaries, especially our attorneys. HHS, it's about an 18.5% decrease into HHS, and that decrease comes due to the fact that some of those positions in that department were shifted over to diversity, equity, inclusion. So, and also some grant funding opportunities there. City manager's office went down 22.2%, and then golf went down 100%. So when we look at investments in key budget themes in terms of this fiscal year, we're looking at the Executive Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. I mentioned the restructuring that would happen throughout mid-year. That is articulated here. It's presented here in this budget, which retains and will retain a firm to complete the Chief Diversity Officer, the Equity Officer. We have fiscal year 2023 department investments that were carried forward, 3 new positions and existing positions transferred. The next bullet here, we're looking at a citywide 3% COLA for employees. And so you'll see a reflected of 3% into the contingency account for the represented unions. And so we haven't settled with them yet. And so that represented COLA will be in contingency this upcoming year. And technology, like I mentioned, ERP, also Microsoft 365, also helps to improve our remote environment for remote participation for our employees. And efficiencies, these are the areas that I had mentioned earlier, some reorganization of divisions. One was the Economic Development Department, where we shifted the cultural division from the city manager's office back to economic development to provide better support, better capacity there. And then the other one is License Commission, which is moving from economic development to inspectional services to streamline permitting and licensing overall for the city of Worcester as well. In addition to those investments, we're looking at public safety, where we're going to continue to budget to maintain the department complements in both fire and police. We're continuing the police cadet program, and then we're also depicting here or displaying the changes that we did to salaries for emergency dispatchers in the mid-year, where we made some aggressive improvements in that department. Human resources, we're funding for full year of employee parking program. That was an initiative that when I came on, we gave employees a free parking. It was an incentive to employees. That will be represented in the human resources budget. Economic development, like I mentioned, the CPA and the cultural division. Elections, funding 3 elections. And then city council, what you'll see is it's about $250,000 in contingency for city council for staffing and other operational needs for the council body. When you look at new positions and regrades, we were at a net new positions of 7. 3 of them were related to technology-related positions. There's 1 in A&F and also HR. 2 in A&F and 1 in HR. This was related to the workday support. Part-time to full-time positions in senior center. We converted part-time positions to full-time to support some of the programs and the efforts done in the senior center and the golf course as well. Departmental positions, one net new due to offsetting eliminations. So we eliminated some positions in departments and we added new. And so as you can see here, DPW and enterprises were 9. Economic development was 1. Health and Human Services youth was 1. Law departments was 3. DEI was 3. And sustainability was 1. All those adjustments gave us a 1 net new position in those departments. When we're looking at regraded positions, we regraded about 31, and the investments of these areas were in the law department. Health and Human Services was specifically the youth office. The youth needed some adjustments there. Public Works and Parks, Treasury, Worcester Public Library, human resources, and also communications. The savings to all of these positions that were unfunded and a restructuring of these positions, we looked at about $676,000 in savings. And those savings we were able to pull from administration and finance, fire, police, DPW, and inspectional services. When we look at the capital budget, that's where you start to see the priorities of the investments in terms of the things that we could do, whether it's the parks, DPW, streets improvement, et cetera. And these projects include, and it's just a list of the number of projects, because we're looking at roughly $45 million of tax levy borrowing for FY24 and capital improvements. And these include Doherty High School and Worcester Arts Magnet. It includes the fire department engines and ladders, upgrades to public safety radio equipment, core public facility rehab projects around all of our city buildings, DCU and Union Station facility improvements, investment in environmental, sustainable, and resilient systems, complete street design and overall improvements, bridge rehab, park improvements, which include Green Hill, East Park, Indian Hill, University, Tacoma, and others, parking, water, and sewer infrastructure upgrades. So there's significant upgrades and investments that we will start to see in our capital borrowing for this upcoming year. However, one of the things that when you look at the budget, right, not only we're presenting an FY24 budget, but we're also looking at future years and what those challenges could present and what constraints we potentially could be in that we want to be aware of. One is increasing education obligations. There's significant increases in education obligation, which it's estimated growth of $26 million in additional required local contributions over the next 5 years, and that's based on the foundation equation. Increased capital demands of school repairs, replacements projects, and that we've been working with the superintendent and school committee on some of those challenges. Increasing personnel commitments, collective bargaining. We know that that's going to be also future budget constraints. Increasing subscription obligations. When we're looking at the world of technology and access to technology, not only for the employee, but also the resident, we're looking at ERP, Workday, Tyler, Vertex One, Microsoft 365, CAD RMS, et cetera. There's significant technology obligations that we as a city will need to endure, and that will have cost implications. Increasing fixed costs like pension obligations. We're seeing about roughly a 3.5% annual increases in that. Health insurance, about 3% plus annual increase. This year we saw a 3.8% increase. Are also debt service obligation. If we're not prudent on our borrowing, on our tax levy borrowing, we could have significant impacts in our debt service obligations in the future years. Increasing financial integrity obligations. New high school fund, 25% annual increases through FY25. And then OPEB, trust fund contributions. It's a 10% annual increase that we need to make sure we're funding OPEB, health insurance of our retirees. Future budget constraints. This graph here gives you what that constraint is. I think many of you have probably seen this. Some of you have, some of you haven't. But this here is a depiction of what those obligations are currently right now over the next future years. And as you can see, there's significant increases for the next, roughly 6 years. Then we'll see a dip because at that dip in 2028, you'll see that dip is because we'll be fully funded our pension obligations at that time. But then you start to see an increase again. And so we need to pay attention to this, and this is something that we, as an administration, are fully aware of, and we want to make sure that our eyes are on this. And as we budget, as we make decisions on priorities and investments, we're paying attention to these debt obligations as a city. Also, like I mentioned, future budget constraints for education, and we're seeing that consistently increase year over year, and you're seeing that in this graph here. So it assumes about roughly a 3.71% annual increase based on the 5-year average of local required contribution increases. And that's also something to consider and of concern. And so basically, this is this year's budget. We feel like we've done a great job working with the departments. Again, I can't stress enough how valuable it has been working with the departments. The departments have taken a really significant approach in finding savings in many different areas to be able to get us to a balanced budget. We've achieved that. And so I just want to thank and give kudos to those departments who've done that work. I want to give credit to our CFO and our budget director, Aaron Taylor and Tim McGurthy, who spent countless hours on working through this, and a budget office who have had their constraints of staffing as well. And they've been able to pull through and been able to put together a budget that's comprehensive, but also presents areas in which we've been able to make some investments, but also the areas that we've had to be a little bit more lean and be prudent to the taxpayers of the city. And then what you see in front of you is just a breakdown of what those budget hearings look like for the next few weeks. And right now, one of the things that's important based on the budget being presented Tuesday, May 9th, we have about 45 days, which takes us to June 22nd, 2023, for final date for City Council review and approval of the budget. So I want to thank all of you for your support. Thank all of you for your feedback, for everything that the council has been able to direct and guide through this process. And I look forward to fruitful conversations with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Well done. Okay, so we are going to, first up is going to be Department of Public Works and Parks. And so just ask people, if you can, I know you don't get to meet the department heads a lot, but if you can constrain it to budget questions, that would be great. And, but I don't know if you want to do each one individually, and or just ask questions in general. I'm sure people have questions. It's probably all over the different departments within the DPW. The Parks is here. I think Parks is here too. Parks is F. So we can ask anything on, we just put in general questions, then we just approve all these together. When we say approve, the budget's not done until the final vote, which is now scheduled tentatively for June 22nd. So we just give the department heads like a sign to say that they don't need to come back when we say approve. Okay. So we are on Department of Public Works and Parks. So you can, Councilor Rivera's up first, followed by Councilor Bergman. Do you want, George? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just really quick, I just had a question. Thank you for all the great work. I think the parks have been, are some of our most valuable assets here in the city, and I think it really gives an opportunity for families. One of the things that I've been talking with families and looking at, it may not be something that we could do now, and I know that it's something that you all been considering and how we're going to look in the future, but making some of the playgrounds more able-friendly, making them similar to what we have at Coes Pond, that we can expand some of our playgrounds that are equipped for all different able-bodied children, and also to really look at how we're doing in regards to dealing with, like, maybe having different aspects of the park, of the playground, that are also helping with any of the children that are on the spectrum. So I think I think we've done really well with like what we have for Coes Pond, and would love to see how we're looking as we're moving forward and doing some of the playgrounds, and how we're taking a look at that. Through the chair, whoever wants to answer.
What, Commissioner or Mr. Antonelli?
Through the chair to the counselor, in all playground designs, we're always looking at including the accessibility component as well as other amenities. So you'll see as we design out newer playgrounds, we're adding in sensory areas. We're adding in those ground level components that are more equipped to be able to allow somebody with a mobility issue to stroll up and to access and use. One of the reasons why we use the playground safety surfacing as well is because it makes the playground fully accessible underneath and around and that. So yeah, we're continually working with our consultants as well as the playground manufacturers to come up with different functionalities that will better give those individuals that may have some type of mobility or other disability or other challenge, access and flexibility to be able to use that. You know, we've worked with a number of them to get the sort of the swing going back and forth a little bit. We've done some things around those. Playgrounds are a little bit behind still because of the way that they're developed and way that we're trying to make them accessible. So as we continue to go down that road, we're looking for those opportunities to be able to do that.
Yeah, I'm wondering, as you're looking at that, do you find that it's adding the aspect of mobility and sensory, how much does that impact the budget through the chair?
Through the chair to the counselor, for the most part, we're including it in it, so it's not as dramatic. Where it becomes more of a problem is when we start building or having to include bridges and long walkways on more of the higher elevated components. That's where the money really comes in, because now you're putting in switchbacks and walkways or bridging to try to get to that point. For the most part, we've been trying to minimize that while still gaining some of that access with maybe something that's a little bit lower, not 6 feet, but maybe it's 4 feet or 3 feet, and we can manipulate that with the earth at that point, which saves us a lot of money.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate that. I think I really can appreciate that as we're looking and renovating some of the playgrounds that we have, that we can have that perspective, that we can make sure that we're making all playgrounds accessible and having the right sensory. And I know that there's a lot of people really in need of that. And I can appreciate also, I think, some of the way that the spray parks and have been designed, I think, are open where it's very welcoming for anyone, right? And I think the most important things, I think you don't really think about it until you have to have, until a parent or a loved one that has a loved one that has that, that is confronting the challenge of not being able to play or experience play in the same way that other kids can. So thank you very much for taking that into consideration. And I hope as we continue to move forward between this budget and next budget, that's always going to be in consideration when we're looking at playground design. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Counselor. We have Counselor Bergman, followed by Counselor Russell.
Mr. Chairman, you indicated any items under Public Works and
Yeah.
Parks, I think. Okay.
You can sit down, Counselor.
It's a force I have it. Through the chair to whoever can best answer the question. I'm looking at page 113, and I just want to understand something about the numbers I'm looking at. First of all, I wanted to compliment DPW, particularly with the snow operation this year. I think by and large, it's a very good trend since Commissioner Fink has been at the helm of getting less and less complaints on a yearly basis and more. Kudos that things are getting done. That doesn't mean every storm is exactly the same, and every storm has their own nuances. I know the district counselors receive the heavy burden of the phone calls when things don't go right, and I do check in with the district counselors. And I know myself, I've received many, far fewer phone calls since Commissioner Fink's been on board, and I think my colleagues, specifically my district council colleagues, would have similar compliments. But my question is the appropriated amount for fiscal 2023 was $6 million. This is page 113 for those who want to know where I'm at. And it looks like through March 31st, we've used 3.4 million, more or less, which my dirty high math tells me there's approximately 2.6 that might not have been used yet. I'm assuming some of that will get used by the end of the fiscal year, but I'm wondering how much of that is anticipated to being used, if I'm reading these numbers correctly.
Jared? Oh, you should introduce everybody. Introduce yourself so
Sorry,
people know.
I'm Jarrett Connor, Assistant Commissioner for Administration and Finance for the Department of Public Works. I would say this number is through March 31st as it was posted. At that time, we were in the middle of a transition of our financial management systems. So there were still payments to be made that were not recognized at that point. I'm looking at a more up-to-date number here. As of today, and the actuals are 3.9 million actually expended. And there are still, some open purchase orders there, most of which will end up getting canceled because obviously there won't be any more snow this year, but there could be
We
still
hope not.
some materials and what have you.
So if I may, thank you. I guess my follow-up question then would be, assuming that $4 million mark goes up to, let's say, $4.5 million by the end of the fiscal year, what happens to the difference between the $4.5 million spent and the $6 million budgeted last year? There's $1.5 million. Where does that go?
Well,
Mr.
a
O'Connor?
portion of that was already transferred to allow for the purchase of capital equipment this fiscal year. So there was, I believe it was a $601,000 transferred out of snow in recognition that that surplus was going to be there. And to the degree that there's still a balance at year end, it would become a part of the free cash year end calculation.
Okay, so that would go to free cash. Okay. And I would like to also just make two other comments, and I appreciate the answer. One is that I'm particularly pleased to see that the tax levy hasn't changed, especially in consideration of the increased wages we gave our plow operators, which I think, and time will tell, and certainly get feedback from them and from DPW, helped hopefully increase the number of available snow plow operators this winter. I guess my only other question, and it's really a small issue compared to what we're discussing with regards to snow, is I receive a few of these calls every winter season. I'm sure my district colleagues receive many more of these types of phone calls. But through the chair, we don't make any accommodations, or do we, for people that are elderly and or physically disabled when it comes time to shovel, in front of their house, their sidewalks. I know that's an issue that comes up, and quite frankly, I don't know if there's an easy answer, but I feel that there should be some program in place to try to help those folks. So through the chair to whoever can answer that.
Commissioner?
Through the chair, I will attempt to. On face value, there's not a specific program for that. I do know that if they look on the website, there is a number to call where they do have volunteers that will assist those that need assistance with shoveling out their walks and entry to their home. But that is not run through the Department of Public Works.
Okay. So my final comment through the chair to the administration is, whatever amounts of money are left over, I'm not looking at this time to say that it should go back anywhere else. I know there are capital needs for equipment, but I do think consideration should be given for a small portion of the money to be set aside for a program where high school students during snow days could be contacted to help folks out that are elderly and or unable to shovel their snow. High school kids, could make a few dollars off of that, and we could make the sidewalks a little safer. Obviously, there would have to be some determination who's legitimately calling and who's looking for somebody just to do it for them. But I do think we're trying to accommodate all sorts of people in the city that have issues with physical mobility, and let's face it, it's often not easy, especially when your timing is poor and you shovel out your sidewalk in your driveway and the snowplow truck just comes and puts it right back. If you're a certain age or certain physical challenge, it's not easy to do that. But all in all, I think the snow operations have been great. I appreciate the answers. I appreciate the balanced budget. And I think that there's been a lot of improvements since Commissioner Fink's been at the helm, and that shows in the lesser number of phone calls that are received with issues regarding snow removal. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We have Council Russell.
Mr. Chairman, overall, I'd like to compliment the Department of Public Works and the Parks Department in their efforts in the previous year and going forward. I think that they've been, the management team has been a good management team. They've been very responsive, at least to constituent services, as constituent requests that I have made on behalf of folks in my district. But I got to ask, through you, Mr. Chairman, to the Commissioner, was it a win or was it a loss moving the customer service office out of the Department of Public Works. Because I feel, and maybe it's just me, but I feel as though I'm bothering the department heads and the assistant commissioner an awful lot more than I have in previous years. When it comes to lights being out, potholes that are not being taken care of, sidewalk repairs that need to be done, snow complaints, and it just seems to have run smoother before when it was right in the Department of Public Works. Maybe because they were right, a couple doors away from where the snowplows were going in and out. I have no idea. But I'm just asking, has it been a win or has it been a loss, and where are the challenges going
Commissioner?
forward?
Through you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure if it's a win or loss situation. It is a transformation. It is a move towards efficiency and even further efficiency when we get into the automated 311 system, where all those complaints will be streamlined. With regards to, a couple of them snow and ice types of things, those customer service works hand in hand with us. They always have, always will. That really hasn't changed, because when a complaint comes in, it gets logged, it gets right out to the inspector on the route, and that gets addressed. With regards to some of the other items, it's regardless of their location and, the department they work for, it's entering the information into the system, and it's a response to the system. So while the perception may be there, and I know there's been some challenges with regards to getting phone systems up and running and things like that, I think as time progresses, they will become even more seamless once we start getting more of that 311 implemented and incorporated and used by the residents to report some of the things that they need or problems that they see on the streets and sidewalks.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, why have we had so many problems with the lights? Has it been because the new equipment needs special parts that we don't have, or is it the contractors that are in charge, or do we even have our own staff that does any of those repairs? Is any of that addressed here in the budget? Because the lights and when there's a light out, it seems to, again, take an awful lot of time. Mr. Coyle and I have become quite close pen pals on various different lights throughout the city, and I just...
Through
Mr.
you,
Commissioner?
Through you, Mr. Chair. I don't have a specific number of lights that have been repaired this year, this time last year. I do know that, as we get into the spring season, there's an awful lot of work that's been pending the winter months due to lack of ability to do construction, so that the springtime, especially when you have a series of lights that are out, usually that involves excavation. A lot of times it involves National Grid. So those things sort of pile up as we get into the spring. I think as of right now, things are pretty well caught up with regards to the outages that we know of. With regards to the system itself, the LEDs, those should last much longer than what had typically been lasting in the past, so those complaints should go down. With the progressive city, we've got a lot more construction going on, and that usually leads to conduits that get hit and outages that occur, or a string of lights that will go out, and then that takes time to go back, chase, and then fix. So I think as of right now, the complaints that I know you've encountered a few for your constituents, but I think the majority of those have been fixed. And I do not know that, I don't think there's an awful lot that are sitting on the pending list currently.
What about through you, Mr. Chairman, what about the inspectors for street work with the utility companies? Do we have enough in the budget for those inspectors and for the DPW staff that go out? Because that seems to be an endless issue when utility companies dig up a street and either patch it and move on quickly and it sinks, or or sometimes they don't even patch it properly. They just, do more of a bubble gum. What is it? Is there anything more that you think needs to happen in your staff as far as inspection of those utility companies? Because there seems to be an awful lot of bad side streets that shouldn't be, quite frankly, and most of it, when we keep going back to it, it always ends up with the utility connections.
Mr.
Not only
Commissioner?
utility companies, but also contractors who might do a water, sewer connection, et cetera. Mr. Chairman.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. So when we had these conversations last year, we did have a backlog of open work orders associated with the various utilities, contractors working in the city with regards to inspection of their trenches. We have caught up with that. I don't have an exact number of where we are, but I will tell you that, again, sort of the timing has a lot to do with it. You've got the gas company that was working through the winter, doing a lot of trenching, replacing their mandated mains that they needed to replace. Those are now in the queue for restoration this year. Some of that has already commenced, and it will continue to, those trenches will continue to be redone as we have just started to get into the construction season. With regards to staffing in the engineering department, particularly the permit section, we have had some changeover in that division. We do have almost a full complement of folks in there, but we tend to lose, especially within the engineering side, we lose some of our engineers to competing interests, whether it's in the city or outside. And then engineers in particular are very difficult to hire only because of the job market of what's out there and the wages that the city's paying. So on one side, I think we're a lot better than where we were last year. I think the reflection of what you're seeing, if you were to transverse the city today with regards to the trenches that need to be finalized and final pavement, I think there are those that are out there, but I think it's more related to the time of year, especially with a construction season, rather than a lack of inspection or a lack of enforcement. But then we do know that when we start looking into the personnel and the vacancies that are there, well, we've done a pretty good job of implementing and hiring additional bodies, especially on the labor side. When you get to the technical side, within engineering and engineers and into the management, those vacancies are harder to fill, again, because of the market that's out there and the rates that we're paying.
Mr. Chairman, just to follow up with that, what about our own contractors that we hire to redo the streets? And they start construction and then they kind of say, okay, we'll see you later. We'll be back when we're back for the final code. When the manager went to one of the neighborhood meetings recently, he got greeted by folks that live on Standish Street complaining about that. It's a perfect example. It's a street that was picked. It should have been constructed. They start some work. The utility companies come in, dig it up because they want to start making some connections. And in the meantime, the road is like a roller coaster waiting for the final construction. I mean, maybe there's more to Standish Street that I know about, but I'm just using that as an example. It seems like the construction starts and then they leave and they come back later on. And when they come back, they do a good job. But there's such a piece in between. Is there anything there in the budget that are we shortchanging our residents and our businesses by not providing something there, or is it just a logistics issue that should be addressed?
Mr. Commissioner?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, the street that was mentioned, Standish Street, is on the list to be repaved this year. It is one of the contracts that is going out, and that represents roughly, I think there's 6 contracts that represent roughly $17 million worth of spending that will take place on streets and sidewalks this year.
Right, but my point, Mr. Chairman, I understand. I believe I prioritize Standish Street to know it. I know it's on the list, but my point is that why is it in such bad condition for such a long period of time? And maybe you can't give me that answer during a budget hearing, but maybe that's something that we should be talking about, because if we don't have the proper staff in place, or if we don't have the proper personnel, or whether they're supervising contracts or whether they're our own team, I for one would like to know about it, because it's very disappointing.
Through the chair to the councilor, if I could add to what the commissioner had stated. So we meet on a monthly basis with all the utility companies, internally with our own water and sewer department, but also with the gas company, National Grid, and cable company, to make sure that we're coordinating all of our projects. So we identify with them, these are the projects we want to resurface in the next couple of years, so they can go in and do the utility work. So typically, we'll do the water and sewer, for example, this year. So those roads that are programmed to have the water and sewer mains reconstructed this year will be reconstructed next year. So unfortunately, they will have to go through a year of the roads being excavated and utility work ongoing. And then what we'd like to see is that the trenches will settle for the winter, and then we'll come back the following year to reconstruct that roadway. So last year, we had a lot of roads that we had water mains planned, and the roadways also planned for reconstruction. We found that the roads were put on hold. So this year, I think we did a much better job of reviewing all the roads that we have going out to bid, and I believe we have about $17 million in roadway work, and identifying which roads have major utility work and pulling them off the list for resurfacing, and just do the utility work this year, and next year, those roads will be resurfaced. So to answer your question, it will take 2 seasons between utility work and resurface the roadway, so.
Mr. Chairman, again, like I said at the beginning, I'm very appreciative of the commissioner and his assistant commissioners and the work that they do personally. My only question is, and it doesn't need to be answered, but my question in general as I think about this is, do we have the proper personnel? And if we do, why are we saying this? And that's it. I mean, it's understandable to have a street in disrepair for a few months. It's not understandable to have it in disrepair for over a year. And it's not just one street, it's street after street, it's utility connection after utility connection, and it's just seems, these efforts for these issues that I'm talking about, not only these patches and work on the roads, but the street light issues, even simple things like snow complaints and that, it just seems to be that something is not clicking as well as it used to be. And if it's staffed, then as one member of the council, I'd love to hear what it is, and I'd be willing to support those changes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We have Councilor Rose.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A vast majority of the calls that I get through DPW are pretty much indicative of our parks, our ball fields, and oftentimes getting those calls outside of the district, given my position in parks over the last 3 terms. But in addition to that, how active our neighborhoods are and my teams and families and so on. So I just have a few questions through the chair to the commissioner. You know, when we look at the total positions overall in the department, we have an increase of 2 positions. You know, when I think about all the calls that I get, you know, of course, partnership with the Little League commissioners, they all reached out to me separately to ask that I advocate for more supports through the department. Calls for, you know, Indian Lake and some of our other parks and water bodies for, you know, park security to be helpful in that regard. We have nature trails, dog parks, I mean, the list goes on. And our beaches have been certainly, you know, very busy and very much utilized as they should. But I feel like it's put an additional burden in the Parks Department. And then when we think about, you know, I have 2 new parks coming online in my district, Tacoma Street and Indian Hill. And you think about inflation on supplies and all the tree things that come up in the district as well. I'm just curious through the chair to anyone really, you know, with all these things, you know, coming online and these increased demands, and to see that there are only 2 additional positions assigned to this and the operations and things are kind of leveled. Just curious how we're going to manage all these increased demands over the course of the next several months, given what we continue to ask of this department. Just curious because I feel like there's going to be, I just feel a sense of more and more and more being asked of them as we progress, and I'm just curious as to how we're going to be able to manage that.
Mr. Manager?
It's a valid question. And it's a question that we all ask ourselves internally as well. Not only for this department, but also every other department. If you think about in the past, you know, 5 years or so, we've added the Department of Sustainability and Resiliency. We've added the Department of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. We've added the Department of Facilities. We've added Division of Lakes and Ponds. I mean, we've added Transportation and Mobility because the demands are there, right? The demands are there, so we as a city council, as a body, we try to think about what are the things that we could do and how do we make sure we invest in those areas that are important for this community. And that's one particular area. When it comes to parks, and the demands around trees and the improvements around trees and the support around that, we will look at the federal funding that is becoming available for that, and we'll tried to look at that, and that provides opportunity to build some capacity, but understanding and knowing that has a 5-year limit. And so we're going to have to make some investments into that over the next 5 years to make sure that there's no cliff effect of those demands. You know, we've invested in the Green Worcester Plan, we've invested in the Urban Forestry Master Plan, et cetera. So you are correct. There's demands and expectations not only from council, from the administration, also from the public, that we're going to have to figure it out and figure out a way to make sure that these departments have the capacity to do that. But we're going to have to look at that financially in a very tough way because we only have so much sources to go to for funding. And so we're going to look at opportunities of grant funding, but also where areas that we can be more efficient. And that's why, you know, some of the reorganizations that you saw in this department was to try to think through about that. How can we be more efficient in the way we do business to reduce costs in certain areas and shift those dollars into other departments that eventually are going to have to expand over time. And so that's the approach, and that's hopefully the approach that we're going to take over the next, 3 to 5 years.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. And I'm not naive to the fact that this is something, the same question could be asked differently of every single department that we're sitting with or around and having these conversations. I'm just more speaking to, as a district counselor, like these are, the vast majority of the calls that I get, particularly in and around our parks, our playgrounds, Indian Lake, enforcement, Bancroft Tower. The list goes on. And so whoever is going to replace me is going to have a tough task of trying to, figure out how to maximize our resources in partnership with the city administration. I think that we can all look at this budget and we know what we're doing. You know what you're doing. Your teams know what they're doing. But I think the public looks at it as, we're tax-paying folks and, we need some help in this particular area or this playground or this beach or whatever. And I think it's going to be hard to describe to them that, we're maxing out some of our resources. So I think some of the messaging around that, I think, would be helpful. And I can tell you honestly that, everyone from Commissioner Fang to Mr. Spencer to Rob and everyone has always done great about being responsive to things. You can call them any time of day, any hour of night, and they'll answer. But I just worry sometimes about that pace by which they're all tolerating, knowing the position that we're in. And so just something that jumped out at me. And of course, the commissioners will be on my phone any minute now on the Little League side. But just wanted to just put that out there in terms of, advocacy. We live in this fishbowl, taxpayers don't always. And I think the messaging around what we can and cannot do is going to be really important, specific to those things that I just referenced. So, thank you all.
Thank you, Council. Council Toomey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, echoing my colleagues, kudos to the department and your employees, the entire team for the hard work that they do. They put in the sweat equity into our city and certainly make a huge difference. I do have a question, Mr. Chair, or perhaps the team here at the table. When do we do capital budget? Because I didn't see it in the calendar.
Through the chair, the capital budget was submitted at the same time as the operating budget.
Okay.
It's part of the package, and so it would be voted at the same time.
Right.
in the-
So I was just wondering, do we discuss that separately? Because we have in the past, so I just didn't see it in the calendar.
Through the chair, we don't have it as its own individual
Okay.
focus, so if you have items in the
Okay.
capital budget related to DPW, you're welcome to
Yep,
bring them up.
okay, thank you. That's what I want to make sure. I didn't want to take up time. So I'm just trying to get some clarification and following my colleague Russell's, Council Russell's comments regarding the number of streets that really need to be repaved. I mean, the major arteries, if you drive around the city, I swear every single major artery is in rough shape. And several years ago, this council authorized a large borrowing to address streets and sidewalks. And I noticed that in our borrowing this year, we've got 11 million, and then for fiscal year 24, new authorization is 17 million. And so I guess my question is, Where is that extra money coming from? The new authorization money?
Through the chair, if I could, we've been working with DPW, recognizing that the street construction schedule does not match the fiscal year. You want to go out for contracts over the winter into the early spring.
Right.
You then start your construction in the spring and through the summer. And so we tried to forward authorize certain amounts to allow them in the spring of next year to go forward with a bidding process in order to choose streets that will actually get funded in FY '25.
Thank you, that makes sense to me. The other thing is the cost of bituminous products and other materials for concrete. How much have they impacted the budget? Do we know, through you, Mr. Chair?
Through the chair to the council, I would say certainly we're seeing an increase in the funding for the cost for the asphalt. But I will say, based on the funds that we have appropriated this year, we have about 14 miles of roadways funded for reconstruction this year, and our goal was 10 miles. So even though the costs are going up, I think between the Chapter 90 money, some additional appropriations through the state last year, and also through the city funds as well, we've been able to basically stretch the dollar. And an example of that is Mill Street. We're going to do a hot in place recycling this year to try to do some, different treatment that may be more cost effective, and we'll monitor that over the time. But it's just an example of where we're trying to stretch our dollar and perform also better maintenance, crack sealing program. This is the second year we've gone out with $170,000 in crack sealing, so keep our good roads good and preserve them. So I think that's also a goal, that we're trying to preserve our roadways. So we do have several major arterials that are in rough shape this year that are going to be reconstructed.
So we have roughly over 500 miles of roads throughout the city. And how much of the budget goes to the roads that are chosen by the district councilors?
I can say through the chair to the council, this year I believe we have about 6 miles of arterials program. So the balance of that, which would be somewhere around 7 or 8 miles, are going to be local roads.
Okay. Is that an increase from last year?
I'd have to check what the miles were from last year, so sorry, through the chair. But it's a significant, I would say what's proposed last year versus this year, our goal is to complete more of the work proposed last year, because utility work, there was a fair amount that was held back, which is now being reconstructed this year. So miles-wise, it's probably a little bit more, but definitely, our goal is obviously to do more and more, but there's only so much money. We would love to do, 20 to 25 miles per year, but the funds obviously don't allow
Right.
for that.
Right. And I also want to thank everybody for their immediate responses. It never fails. I get a call back or an email or a text right away. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to first begin by asking the question about our process here. So are we jumping around and doing all these different divisions?
Yeah,
So
we get the whole, like I announced at the beginning of this, they're all on the table, so you can ask any question you want.
So I have questions that are separate
No, you can ask
from
your
the
questions.
Parks Department that I may be still formulating. I know the history that we've usually done is we've gone division by division.
No, we haven't. We've done this the same as last year.
Last year, I recall last year, and prior to that, we would go golf course, snow removal,
can come back,
et
though,
cetera.
if you
Okay, I
look
just
for-
want to make sure I can come back
Oh,
and
yeah.
speak again.
This budget's not done until
right.
it's done.
Thank you. My first question to the chair, to the administration is, and I brought this up again last year around the presentation of the budget. So I looked through the first couple of, I'm gonna call them divisions here. And, we used to have goals, visions, priority areas, objectives. We were also provided with division highlights from the prior fiscal year. I found a couple of them a little further along. I know that the city manager's division certainly did it, public health, I see here. But a number of these did not, and I just wanted to understand that to the
Mr.
administration.
McGurthy?
Through the chair, every department has provided a strategic plan and their outcomes for the prior year. When we look at DPW, you can find the Public Works component under Administration and Finance.
And then
And
parks?
it applies, parks would be captured within that element as well.
Where's that?
It's page 87, 88, 89 of the budget.
Under Public Works?
Yes, it's under Public Works, Administration, and Finance.
Okay.
Which is the main
So it's all
category.
condensed? Okay. Thank you for that. I wanted to begin by asking a couple specific questions related to parks. So just for clarification in regards to the staffers that we have, and the folks, the laborers and the foremen. So I noticed under Green Hill Farm, it indicates that there's 7 working foremen. Under parks, indicates that there's 12 laborers and 2 craftsmen. Is there any, or is that together? Wait a minute. So yeah, clarify that for me, because maybe I'm looking at this diagram wrong. Are they all under parks? Or is there some under Green Hill Farm? I'm just trying to, this page right here, trying to understand, like, is this right here separate from the Green Hill Farm piece?
Through the chair, if you're looking at page 106, that
Yes,
is the
106.
organization of the Parks, Recreation, and
Yes.
Hope Cemetery Division. So everything under that falls under what we call the Parks Division.
Okay, and they go throughout the city to the 52 parks, all of them? Okay. And I also want to echo what some of my colleagues talked about in terms of staffing. Over the number of years I've talked about, a couple of divisions in particular, hoping for and anticipating more significant staffing increases. And I understand here with this budget, it's being presented as sort of a lean budget, and we've done a lot of shuffling to meet our fiscal needs and operational needs. That being said, in regards to the security guards that were referenced, indicates here that we had 3 last year and we have 3 this year. And I'm just wondering, in addition to the park stewards, how many total individuals do we have for sort of park oversight during the summertime? So I know we have 2 and 1, 3 security, and between senior security and security guards, we have 3. And down here, we have parks on page 107. We have parks stewards / temporary staff. How many individuals are employed within that 111,000?
Mr. Antonelli?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through the chair to the counselor. In the end, on the seasonal side, we have hired as many as 150 youth temporary workers. Of those, approximately 138 or so to 140 end up being on the park side. They're usually somewhere in the 6 to 8 week program, pretty much when high school is out and just before high school starts back up in the last week of August. And then they fluctuate between maintenance, park steward program, aquatics. We've had some recreation in the past as well, and then general maintenance functions.
Okay, and those are youth, that includes college-age folks as well?
Through the chair to the counselor. So it encompasses 3 things. 1, young adults or students that are 18 and under. Young adults that are that 18 to 23 timeframe that are college students. And then we also have, both in the park side and then at the cemetery, staff that are young adults as well that are out of college and work there as a temporary position. We've used that mechanism there very well, the commissioner and I, through support of the city manager, we've used that to really push on obtaining full-time staff, though. So, and we say that because we've been able to take those temporary staff, educate them in how we do things and how our parks, cemetery, and DPW operate. We've encouraged them to apply for full-time positions as a laborer, MEO when assigned. We've assisted some of them in getting their CDL licenses. And so the nice thing about that is that we understand who they are, we understand where they're coming from, and we're able to work with them to get them a full-time job with full-time benefits with one of our divisions, whether it's operations or parks or someplace else. So it's really been those seasonal positions have really been a launching pad for us in our bid to hire full-time staff.
That's great. That's good work. The next question I had was related to the overtime. Recreation division overtime. What does that pertain to, given the number of employees? I know it's a small amount, it's only $50,000, but.
Mr. Antonelli?
Through the chair to the counselor, that funding component is for lifeguards that may, where we may need them, or aquatic staff to work overtime because either we're short or we have other components there. It's for our full-time staff that are assisting in a program-related item, whether it's recreation-based or aquatic-based. It sort of gears those pieces depending on how we need that. Sometimes it falls under maintenance, sometimes it's recreation. It really just depends on what the purpose of the time there is for us to be able to identify it.
Okay, and out of the 64 positions, how many of those are folks that are actively in the work field or working? So, you have some admin positions, some commissioner positions, but how many of these 64 positions are folks who are out there maintaining our parks, overseeing park safety and things of that nature? What's the total of the 64?
Through the chair to the counselor, so on the park side, there are 30 positions there, and of those positions, all but one, which is the director of maintenance, and even he is out there daily picking up trash and doing things on a daily basis. The cemetery is similar. At the cemetery as well as forestry, they are out there full-time doing that legwork for maintenance and care of our park, cemetery, as well as forestry division. We technically, Mr. Chairman, to the counselor, there are only 2 staff in our main office that I would consider office staff for all of that operations, and there's 1 person currently. We will have 2, but there's 1 currently at Hope Cemetery. So everybody else is mostly out there working, taking care, maintaining, constructing our park, cemetery, and our forestry operations.
Through the chair to the administration, how much have we invested in parks over the last 5 years or so to the administration?
Mr. Antonelli?
Through the chair to the counselor, if you take out the 3 years prior, we're probably at about $60 million, 65 in that ballpark, between grants as well as funding that's come in through the Commonwealth or others.
And moving over towards the maintenance division overtime, it's about $220,000. And then there's, it's on page 108, and then the maintenance repair building, the maintenance repair equipment, appropriations, maybe somewhere close to $600,000 in total. I'm just wondering, 300,000. That maintenance overtime number, the 220,000, is that? Well, I guess the question is, what I'm trying to get to is, we've invested 60 or so million in the last few years in our parks. and maintaining them is a challenge. We have our local leagues, our youth leagues, our adult leagues, really pitching in and mowing grass and, making sure that in some instances that the playing surfaces or areas are playable and not a safety risk, and it's a joint effort. But I want to know where the needs are in this department, because I also am aware that there's times when we just can't get to every park, every piece, and we have to maintain all the monies that we've placed into our parks. So with this maintenance division over time, you probably don't have an answer, but what I'm trying to get to is, how are we going to be able to maintain our investment with the low number of staff that we have? 30 folks in the parks, probably should be double that, and we don't have money isn't falling out of the sky. But what is the overall strategic plan for maintaining our investment? Through the chair.
Through the chair to the counselor. So the first step in all of this is design. So when we're going out and redesigning a public park, we are looking at that park in a way to minimize what I would call handwork, the trimming, the stuff that takes the most amount of time. And by doing so, we're able to have staff on larger mowers doing their job and mowing. I talk to my staff on a regular basis, and Scott Moran, who's sitting behind me, if he's still there, he is, would tell you that, my comment to him is, we can mow that field as many times as we want, but if we don't trim it, it looks like we were never there. So with that, a lot of it happens on the design side. Step two is just trying to stay on top of the majority of the issues that we end up having. And Scott has done a fabulous job in changing the philosophy of how we attack a particular issue or a particular problem. Former City Manager Augustus and City Manager Batista, have been very open to changes in how we operate, so that we're putting 2 garbage trucks on, and we're going 7 days a week. We're doing those kinds of things in an attempt to stay on top of it. Can we always? No. But I think we're able to accomplish the majority of it as long as we don't get a lot of rain, and then the sun doesn't shine for the next 7 days and the grass becomes knee high. We're able to stay on top of that side of it. This time of year is probably our hardest, just because we're getting ready for Memorial Day at Hope Cemetery. We are trying to get all of our parks up and cut and, playing fields ready, because athletic fields such as baseball and softball require more maintenance than our other fields, our rectangular fields, just because of the infield. So could we use more staff? Yes, and I think everybody would tell you that, every single department would tell you that that would be ideal. But what we're doing is maximizing our use, and the overtime piece assist us in accomplishing goals that otherwise we wouldn't be able to do, whether it's islands and medians that are our responsibility, or open park areas that don't have athletic teams on them beginning at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and that we wouldn't be able to be on. So we're very strategic in regards to how we try to do that. Weather does play a role. As I said, we do get behind sometimes, but we have probably the most dedicated staff in parks that go above and beyond every single day. And we're happy on that end of it, and we're happy to continue to push forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know that there's been work done around improvements, safety improvements, and playability of our sports field this season. And I know that there's a lot of work and a lot of focus there. What I'd like to get back is, at some point, a report on what efforts have been made. I think we have a very, very diversified and varied call for access to fields and things of that nature. But we need to make sure those fields are also safe and playable. If you could just share briefly, what sort of funding has been targeted and what sort of work has been done regarding the safety and playability of our sports fields for this year.
Mr. Antonelli?
Through the chair to the counselor, so we've implemented with our new general foreman a full athletic component to address some of the areas that we identified as lacking in our overall park operations. And so we've selected a number of sports fields that are in use, that are the most highly used, in an attempt to, one, aerate, fertilize, take care of, in an attempt to make them more playable, safer to use, and more enjoyable for the participants in our leagues and organizations. That process has taken money, it's taken effort, but the way we looked at it is we're going to build on those successes, and then as we continue to build on those, we'll begin to expand that functionality out. We may at some point get there where, without more funding, we can't go anymore. We're not fully there yet, but we're building out what needs to happen and how it needs to happen to make sure those athletic fields are in good condition. Secondarily, in the design, we are making sure that what we're putting in meets the design that we want, meets the design that is easy to maintain, and is functionality-wise fits what we need it to fit.
Thank you. I again want to commend your folks that are out there on the front lines doing that work. I appreciate the intentionality. I think all of our visitors who come and play on those fields and our residents who are from here, who have access and have the ability to use those fields, are better off for it. And Mr. Chairman, I don't know if we can get a report back, if I can make a motion during this forum, that we get a report back specifically on these efforts. And the last thing is, I've been calling for this for a while, and I'm going to make the call again in the form of a motion that we get a strategic plan on what efforts are and what the strategy is, an overall master plan on our parks and protecting our investments, particularly the new parks and the new fields that have been completed. I know I live right next to Greenwood Park, and I know that they used to do a lot of stuff with the sprinklings. Where? That's the best part. They used to have some sprinklers and things of that nature that I don't know if they're even operable anymore, but it is a great park and in great condition. Would like to see from the administration overall master plan and the staffing analysis to accompany that. I've called for the staffing analysis in this department, Health and Human Services, in the past, and would like to see those again, because I think if you have the support of this body, we heard a little bit more about DPW a little bit earlier and the need for more staffing. Perhaps we, in this next fiscal year, as a team, the administration, the council, can really take a look at how we can do that in a more creative way. And I know we have capital projects and things of that nature, but we should really take a look at this. We've invested a whole lot of money. It makes sense. And the last question I had is, statement. Again, I voted against eliminating jet skis at Indian Lake. One of the concerns that we had, I wanted to see more police oversight there on that body of water. And I know I was actually over by Chuck E. Cheese the other day, and I saw the new police boat driving around or being pulled down the road. But what is the intersection between park stewards or park security when it comes to concerns in a park? So I've been running programs at Crompton Park since 1996 and have been using that park for basketball purposes since the mid-'80s. And I know we've had some folks lose their life there. We've had other concerns there and other parks. And there's always a plan to rotate more park staff and, if necessary, law enforcement. That did not happen to the degree that it made enough an impact to maintain the option of jet skiing on Indian Lake. But I'm trying to understand, you know, what sort of overtime is dedicated toward that in this budget. You know, and that's why I was asking the question about recreational overtime, because there will be parks that we need more oversight than is currently possible. So through the chair, if they could answer that question, that'll be my last question.
Mr. Antonelli?
Mr. Chairman, to the counselor, so DPW and Parks, and particularly Parks, has a cooperative relationship with the Worcester Police Department. I have a captain that has been assigned to me that I can go to at any time to assist when we have particular issues. So our goal really is to use park security as a mechanism to inform. You know, these are individuals that don't have a firearm, don't have any of those kinds of functions, and they're there to inform. So our attempt always is to inform the public, advise them that a particular situation is not lawful or not appropriate, and most times we get an okay response out of that. In those times that we don't, or in those times where that goes in a different direction, our staff are instructed to get themselves out of this issue and call 911 immediately. If it's just something where they're seeing a constant issue at a constant facility, we have a report that they give to us. I will reach out to the captain and say, I need some assistance at this particular facility. And what we're trying to do is streamline the timing. Because we'll get calls from residents and from everybody and say, well, it's happening all the time. Well, it's not happening all the time, right? So we'll send park security over there and we'll try to minimize that timing so that we can say to PD, we know that it's happening Tuesdays and Thursdays at, 10 p.m. or it's every Friday night at 11 or whatever that may be, so that Worcester PD can use their resources effectively to assist us in addressing the concerns that we may have. It's worked out well. There's still challenges, without a doubt. I mean, we still work through some of those things and different things come up. We do only have one park security guard on at a time. I think we've only had the full 3 individuals for about 2 months since we've implemented the program. Either they've left for other purposes or they've resigned or whatever else. So we're in the middle of hiring our second park security guard. We have a senior in one right now. So hopefully by June, mid-June, we'll be back up to our complement of 3. And then some days we'll end up having double coverage that will assist us to hit more park facilities, mostly on weekends when not everybody is around. So we're covering weekends from 7:30 in the morning till midnight currently. And then we're covering Monday through Friday between 3:30 and midnight to try to address those issues that may be occurring. Park security can issue parking tickets, which has been very helpful on that end of it. But again, it's more educational is the direction that we're trying to go. And then when we need enforcement, we'll get assistance from Worcester PD.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would say to the administration that this might actually be an area where in the future we can save some monies. We have approximately 2, maybe 3 right now, maybe 1 at a time, depending, park securities for 52 parks. And so I believe that their presence and relationships that they build with folks when you're down at a park often is important. That helps when you're addressing issues. And an expansion here might result in less monies being spent spent for a law enforcement response, perhaps, for these issues that could be responded to with information and the like, as mentioned. I have noticed recently a bit of an uptick in some of the unsheltered folks who are in our parks seeking shelter and other things. And I know I said that was my last question, but I need to ask this question. What efforts, and is there any part of your budget that's focused upon working with that population who I've witnessed recently are having a bit of an uptick in our parks? So what assistance does the Parks Department have, and what is their vision and strategy related to the unsheltered? Through the chair.
Mr. Manager? I'll do Mr. Antonelli.
Through the chair to the counselor, so Parks works directly with quality of life staff and assist them in the needs that they may have in a particular issue. We are a conduit for information from residents who will call us to give us information about something that may be happening. In all cases, when it comes to those individuals, quality of life takes control over the situation, and then if they need assistance, we work directly with them.
All right. Thank you. And Mr. Chairman,
Okay, Donna.
without, this is not a parks thing, I guess this is an overall, Mr. Fink. That was my last parks question. Just the question as it relates to diversity, equity, inclusion. Overall, what efforts and steps are being made to improve those processes in your department, and obviously if it's in your department in the divisions, to ensure that those DEI values are standardized and that there's an equity in recruitment of staff? Through the chair.
Mr. Commissioner Fink?
Through the chair, with regards to diversity, equity, and inclusion, where we look to really strengthen and incorporate fair and even measures is both during the hiring process and the promotion process, so that when someone comes in the door to get an interview, they are met with a team of folks in that interview panel that they get to feel that, okay, this is a place I want to work. When we get into promotions, there are strict guidelines as far as going through the process, and we work with HR as far as, okay, what's the job description? What are the qualifications? What are the questions that you're going to ask? How are you going to screen the applicants that come in? And then how do you finally do the selection? And all of that is done in a very transparent way, and it goes back to HR for their blessing. So they make sure that, we do treat everyone the same, give everyone the same opportunities, so that everyone has that same equal opportunity to succeed. And if you ever take a look in any of the divisions within Public Works, I don't think you'll find a more diverse workforce, because I think it is one of those things that we strive to. I think it is one of the things that the workforce does mirror the constituency of the city. And I think when the folks are out there doing their day-to-day jobs on the street, in the fields, in a median, wherever it may be, I think the residents can relate to the folks that are there, that these are city folks that share the same compassion for the quality of life that we've got within the city, and is exhibited by the men and women of the department, that every day they're out there and every day they go above and beyond to assist the residents of the community.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would say this to the administration. We haven't had a diversity officer, or whatever the new title is at this point, for well over a year now. But that work, I'm sure, and I would expect, continued under your leadership. That being said, I would like to get a report back at some point as a way of a motion for, all the departments in terms of policy, practice, procedure, and orientation relative to a DEI framework. We can't afford to skip a beat in that regard, Mr. Chairman. And, all the works that the Parks Department does is greatly appreciated, but they need more staff. Thank you.
Thank you. So on those orders, those in favor, opposed, so ordered. We have Council Merrill Carlson, Council Corio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I'd like to start off by saying how much I appreciate all the work that's done by this department. We've seen lots of changes over the last couple of years and certainly have been very, very good changes. In terms of the Parks Department, through you, Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Antonelli, how many parks do we have in the city at this point?
Mr. Antonelli?
Through the chair to the councilor, we are currently at 61. We'll be at 62 beginning in July.
Okay, thank you. You know, I would really like to say to this department and to the administration how grateful I am as a district councilor for all of the work, and I believe we've spent, since I've been elected, we've spent $90 million in the Parks Department. So to the previous administration, kudos to them and to this administration in keeping that momentum going, because as I've always said, and I'm a firm believer in, our parks are really quality of life for all of our residents. And I, for one, given being in District 2, that has 21 of those 62 parks in District 2. And Mr. Antonelli has done, as chair of parks, taken over after Councilor Rose. I can say to you is that I'm amazed at the work that gets done with the little staff that he has. So I, too, Mr. Chairman, would like to see that this department, when the time comes, that we certainly give them what they need. So I just really want to say how much I appreciate all the work that is done, because I, for one, know on a daily basis what these parks mean to certainly my district. Following up on that, to the commissioner, I know that Councilor Russell raised this as well as some others have raised this. First, let me start by saying how much I appreciate you and all the work that you do under your leadership. And certainly, when we talk about snow removal, I think last year was a good year for us. I know it didn't snow all that much, but again, as somebody who's a district councilor, I appreciate not getting all the calls for all the work not being done. And as I looked at the budget, and I certainly know that all of our contractors wanted more money, and people were a little anxious about that, but as we look at the budget, it certainly didn't seem to have great impacts on the budget. But as we talk about, and what I'd like to know through you, Mr. Chairman, to the commissioner, and I know that you've answered some of these questions, but when these roads are being done and under construction, and I heard you say that it may be next year that they come back, I have to tell you, take a look at Burncoat Street as a street that the utility companies have come there and they've dug up that road, and we never, as a city, left those roads in these types of conditions. And I really would like to know, why are we allowing the utility companies to put these roads back in this type of condition and find it acceptable that they're going to come back next year? And who is inspecting these roads? Because I have to tell you, again, and I'm going to use Burncoat Street, but I could use several streets throughout the city, that more and more and more complaints are coming through in regards to the condition of the roads and how they're left after the utility companies are coming in. And we have always been told, and it's always been the practice, that once a utility company comes in and they do their work, that they will leave the road in the condition that they found it in. And quite honestly, that's not happening. So I would like to know, what is it that we can do? What is it that you need from us, if anything, for this to, honestly, for us to be able to say to these contractors, that just is not acceptable? What is it we need to do through the chair to the commissioner?
Mr. Commissioner?
Through the chairman, Councilor, Burncoat Street is probably it's a special case in that you've got a street that sees an awful lot of traffic. The gas company was in there, they replaced the main, but not only did they replace the main, they replaced every lateral going up that street, which then meant that there was cross-trenching, AKA an inverted speed bump, every 50 to 100 feet. We did hear a lot of complaints about that last year. It was a long stretch of road, so it took an exorbitant amount of time for them to, one, do the work, and that again is on the list for resurfacing for this year. For a portion of it, DTM wants to do a little redesign in the worst of it, but I know I heard from a number of councilors, the mayor and the manager's office with regards to the condition of Burncoat Street, and I guess we'll look at lessons learned with major streets like that. How do we limit the work of the contractor? How do we make them do it in such a way that the inconvenience to the residents or the motorists that have to take those streets is minimized? And that may be by doing it at a particular time of year or shortening the amount of work that they're going to do. I know that when they do similar work, when you get into some of the neighborhood streets, it's not as dramatic, and it, quite frankly, it doesn't see as much traffic. Therefore, it doesn't have the settlement or the problematic when winter's over. I do know that we have continued the program with regards to, as soon as the construction season opens up, that they, on those trenches that go down the street, they're doing an 8-foot mill and resurfacing on those trenches. So for a lot of streets that they've been on, it actually ends up being much better than the surface than when they started. That being said, I'll take your comments and criticisms into consideration as we move into this construction season and are faced with the same utility companies wanting to do the same projects. How can we minimize the impacts of what it is they're doing?
I certainly appreciate that, because I can say to you that this is not what has been done in the past. This is what's being done in the last probably 3 years. And we have a lot of side streets that I, on a regular basis, get calls because those roads are not put back into a condition that, quite frankly, should be acceptable by us as a city. So again, looking for how do we resolve this, and I'm sure that you'll take a look at this, Commissioner. The last thing that I have is also, what can we, through the chair, to the administration, and certainly to the commissioner, what can we do as a council to be helpful to what is happening with Casella? So a lot of my district is a Friday pickup. And I can honestly tell you that I don't like to see Friday mornings come anymore, because there are so many streets that are not picked up by Casella in the recycle truck. I for the life of me, don't understand how by this time they don't know our city streets. But how is it that week after week after week that it continues? So again, and look, I know that when I make the call, you send somebody out and they pick it up. But how do we as a city, as an administration, how do we fix this issue? And if there is something that we can do as a council to be helpful, I'm on it. Because for the folks who are on this Friday pickup, it's really it's tiring, it's frustrating. And when we talk about our streets and we want to keep them clean, it's pretty hard to keep the streets clean when all that recyclable is blowing all over our city streets.
Through
Mrs. Commissioner?
Through the chair. Counselor, point well taken. I know there's, and I get them, there's a handful of streets that continue to be problematic on Friday, and I've gotten to be about the same apprehension about a day that should be, before a weekend. Instead, it's, can we get the recycling done? I will have those conversations with Casella, ask them to, and I will work with customer service to get the list of the complaints, not only on the Friday route, but others. And if there are chronic complaints, then request Casella to look at possibly modifying the route schedule so that the repetitive complaint streets are aimed at being done in the beginning of the day as opposed to later in the day, so that we'll know early on whether there's a miss or not so that they can react to it.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, there is one other comment that I'd like to make in terms of the customer service. Again, I heard your response to the customer service, but I do have to tell you that, again, I think that we should take a look at that and how that's working, because I, for one, am beginning to get a lot more complaints about that in terms of response time. But I want to preface that by saying is that there is never a time, quite honestly, that I make a call to this department or any department under Commissioner Fink that they don't respond to me immediately. But again, this is really about how can we be helpful, and is it more staff? And I certainly get it, Mr. Manager. But by the same token, when we're given, whether it's the Parks Department or the Commissioner, a ton of new work, I just, want us to keep our eye on, are we really giving them the tools that they need in their toolbox with staffing levels? So again, just want to close by saying I appreciate all the work that this department does, because I quite frankly talk to them probably on a daily basis. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Council Clorio.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A lot of my questions were answered, so I'd like to spend the time maybe talking about and just getting some clarification on the municipal golf course. Just some items, that's page 111 and page 112. Through the chair to Mr. Antonelli, on the debt services, through the chair, it seems like it has been reduced. Can you just clarify and just go over the reduction in debt services from 2023 to 2024 proposed budget?
Mr. McGurthy?
Oh, Mr. McGurthy.
Through the chair, we'll get the number in a moment, but it's removal of golf equipment debt service that have been carried through that we're no longer paying.
Okay, great. So on the revenue side of things, now, first of all, I want to say that the golf course is one of the city's gems, and I very rarely, almost none, I hear any kind of complaints or any kind of, criticism of the golf course. I believe it's run well. It looks beautiful. The facilities are ideal for a city, and I'm really grateful that we have that service here in the city. So when we're talking about the revenue, it's the golf course revenues. It appears here that there's a decrease. So is that an anticipation in, why do we have, through the chair, to either Mr. Antonelli or Mr. McGurthy, why do we anticipate a decrease in revenues in the next fiscal year? Through the chair.
Mr. McGurthy?
Through the chair, the decrease in revenue is the decrease in city funding that would have gone to the accounts in FY23 that will not be going in FY24. In prior years, the city tax levy has contributed to the golf course. That contribution is zeroed out for FY24, so that's the decrease represented in the revenue.
Well, if you look the line before it, I see the tax levy subsidy, I understand that, but before the line before that, golf course revenues, it's gone from 2 million to 1.8. And I'm just curious, is that is there something that's changed? That we're having I would assume that we would be anticipating more revenues, not less. Or am I reading this wrong? Just for clarification through the chair.
Through the chair to the counselor, you are reading that correct. And I think there's a couple of reasons for what you see. Most importantly is that the revenues are shown to cover the expenses. So the revenue budget here meets exactly to the dollar. The expenditure budget shown above.
Okay.
But it's also the case that in the last few years, in fact, through the COVID pandemic, when the golf course was one of the few city amenities that was open, it experienced a real spike in revenues. It will remain to be seen if that higher level of revenues persists into future years. We certainly hope that it does. But so at this point, the revenue estimate is a conservative one in that it suggests we expect it to meet expenditures as allocated here. Through the course of the fiscal year, those revenues will be monitored, and it could be the case that the golf course continues to perform well. We certainly hope that it does, and that the revenues could exceed this estimate. But at this time, we wouldn't want to make an estimate that's more aggressive than necessary.
That's what I thought. Now, through the chair also, too, I remember when my first year on the council, I proposed, it was accepted, and we implemented like a military discount. How well if you can just review the discounts that you have for the golf course, and how well have these discounts been advertised, and have more people taken advantage of them? Through the chair.
Mr. Antonelli?
Through the chair to the counselors. So we have our baseline season passes, and then we really have three other alternatives. One is our senior discounted pass. We have a senior or a veterans discounted active member, veterans discount, and then we also have a student, which is under the age of 18. All of those continue to trend relatively well. Student has trended a little bit better than the other ones. Seniors ebbs and flows depending on each year. So overall, all of them are doing well. They're all geared towards getting people out onto our golf course for interactions with the course, and as well as a quality of life component where in some cases it's their only recreational activity, right? So we want them to be out there with the fresh air. So all of our numbers are good. We have a package that goes out. So our golf course, through our Tee Time reservation system, when you sign up for that, we garner that email address, and so we send out promotions, we send out information about all of these things through that system as well. And then as individuals come in, we're always offering up the information that we have available to them, or for them to be able to sign up so we can get further information out to them. So, on the marketing side, it's relatively easy for us to continue that because we're always bringing in new customers into the golf course. And the reason why we're bringing in is because the conditions at the golf course warrant that. People want to come and play. It's not a cow pasture. It's not, an old school golf course. It rivals some of the other public courses as well as some of the private courses in and around the Worcester area. So we are excited to keep that. We're pushing forward with that even further. We just completed a bunker renovation this past year. We have some tee work that's going to be happening coming up. So we're looking to always improve and always make sure that what we have for the golf course is high-end but affordable.
Thank you. So, through the chair to Mr. Antonelli, do we work with the senior center to maybe reach out or the veteran shelter or veteran services, so other areas, do we cross-advertise there through the chair?
Through the chair to the counselor. Yes, we do. We also have a couple of programs that we run with both of those groups. So through Veteran Services, they have a program that the PGA puts on where we give veterans free training or free lessons on golf. We also run our student program, our youth program, which is from ages 7, 8 till 12, that we run every summer. And even on the senior side, we're working with them to continue to push through with that. One of the areas that we really focused on, or we're beginning to focus on, is that that informational and that training mechanism, so the lesson side. And so we're doing more and more of that throughout the golf course and throughout the year in an attempt to, again, gain those young adults who want to learn to play the game of golf and make Green Hill their home course, as well as keep our seniors and attract our veterans to come back and be able to use our facility as well. So we're using all of those. Could we do more? Yeah, without a doubt. I think we could, do more on that end of it. There's always changes and upgrades that we can do, but we are going down that road, yes.
Thank you. I appreciate the answers and all the work that you've done to make this course a place where people really want to go and want to be part of. And thank you for the team for all the work they've done in the parks and everything else. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Hadjian.
Through the chair,
sorry.
I'm sorry, if I could, just to answer the question that was asked earlier, the decrease in debt service was about $174,000 that decreased, $172,000 of which was equipment that zeroed out, so.
Thank you.
Councilor Hadjian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wanted to say thank you to Mr. Fink, Mr. Coyle, and Mr. Antonelli. Your response and professionalism responding to a lot of district councilors' calls and emails hasn't gone unnoticed. So as the newest district councilor, I just want to thank you very much for that response. Just also want to say special thanks to Mr. Antonelli for coming out and meeting with the Columbus Park neighborhood. Meeting last night, and just it's really refreshing to see you all to come to some of our neighborhood meetings and just being there with our constituents. So I really appreciate that, even though I know it takes time. The one question that I had that has come up a lot in my neighborhood meetings is regarding clarifying what the resurfacing process looks like. So every district councilor in the past has picked certain streets or sidewalks. I know that this is transitioning to, and Mr. Raleigh will probably speak about this, but Mr. Fink, it would be helpful for the public to just kind of get a clearer picture of what that process looks like and what sort of criterion we're using moving forward that's objective and it's not mostly, complaint driven.
Through the chair. There was a memo that came out from the Department of Transportation and Mobility maybe a couple of weeks ago that sort of spelled out some of the major projects and some of the major streets and things that we're doing. It's really moving forward. It's in a state of flux, if I may say. We're trying to work with the Department of Transportation and Mobility, identifying where money should be spent, not only on an arterial basis, but also within those residential areas. Years ago, a pavement condition index was done on the streets. When previous selections had been done, for street resurfacing on a residential basis within the districts. We looked at complaints. Where's the list of complaints? Was it on a list that somebody complained about that got on a list to be eligible? What was the street condition index from the last time that it was done? And then the recommendations from the department, engineering staff would indicate that really want to look at where those lower numbers are. With ARPA, there was a $6.2 million set aside. I'm sorry, it wasn't ARPA, it was the recovery money. And the previous city manager said, look, what's it take to take the worst streets in the city and bring them up? And how do we identify those worst city streets? And we looked at the worst, based on that pavement condition index, what were the worst streets, and took it up to the 6.2 million. That was not necessarily equitable expenditure across different districts, only because districts are determined by population, not by road miles. So over years of picks and equity within that distribution of funds fixing the streets, obviously an inequity occurred. And by looking at those bottom $6.2 million worth of streets to resurface, that looked at leveling the playing field. So we don't get into a similar situation. We're working with the Department of Transportation and Mobility, saying, all right, where do we move this program? Where do we come forward? And that's one of those things that we will be rolling out, will be further developing and bringing to the City Council. Right now, the effort has been with the amount of work that is currently on the Department of Public Works plate. How do we get those contracts identified, out the door, awarded, and get that project moving, knowing that it's time for construction, and that time is limited. So more to come on what we're going to do with the resurfacing within the residents.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Fink. That's super helpful. I think that for those of us that attend neighborhood meetings, it's a question in terms of process that has been surfacing a lot, and it's really good to know that you're going to be using a process that both is equitable and has some objective criteria attached to it. The last question that I have, and this is something that I've noticed maybe a little bit more recently, is the number of big bulk items dumped on the streets. I'm just wondering, have you all noticed an increase in complaints or reports of more bulk items being thrown on the streets or our parkways?
Mr. Commissioner?
Through the chair, I don't have a number. We can certainly research the number of complaints and see if that number is increased or not. One of the things that really need to do, and it's continual, is get the word out, educate the folks. What can they do with trash, recycling, bulk items, yard waste? Because it seems that there's relatively a portion of the community that is transient. They come, they go, but we need to get something together so that they all know what to do. Working with the communications team, we're trying to come up with a resident's guide to how to effectively manage your waste. And that's going to touch on everything. It's been drafted, it's been put together in both English and Spanish, and we just started rolling that out within the past week. That does touch on a lot of things, including bulk items. So that, along with, we should be seeing coming up in June, some enhanced rolling out with the quality of life team, and really a different approach with the way they're taking it. Public Works is looking to augment and complement their efforts, and really they're going to get into the neighborhoods. And again, if we can arm them with both information, flyers, and literature, so that we know in specific neighborhoods there's specific problem areas. How do we go about getting the word out to those folks so they can help themselves manage the waste and really take pride in their neighborhood by doing the right thing?
And thank you, Commissioner Fink. And if I could just make a recommendation, actually in the form of a motion. It's great that we have a multilingual process or for disseminating information. I would ask that we explore maybe 3 or 4 more languages that are spoken in the majority of our Worcester neighborhoods. And it would be helpful to have as many languages as possible just to make sure that we're covering everything. But thank you and kudos to you all for the amazing work you do.
Thank you. So form of an order. All those in favor, opposed, so ordered. So that brings us to the end. So
Mr. Chairman, real quick on the golf course.
Sure. Councilor
Thank
King.
you. This is a quick question. I know, again, kudos that we're not accessing the tax levy any longer for the golf course. I think the folks that have supported that golf course over the years were right. And both of my older daughters were part of the junior golf program there. And I didn't see anything specific on there. I'm just wondering, I know I think it used to be like 60 or so golfers, young, I think between ages like 8 and 12 or something, were able to get familiar with the game there. Just wondering, is that still going on? Is there an additional line item for that, or is that not a budgetary item through the chair?
Mr. Antonelli?
Through the chair to the counselor, so that event or that program is twofold. We get donations from a family of a golfer who unfortunately passed away in an accident on Pleasant Street a number of years ago. Okay. And the rest of it is just buried within the operational budget for the golf course. Okay. So there's nothing specific about it within the budget format.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. I would just recommend maybe at some point considering expanding the number of kids perhaps that we take, 'cause I know it's very popular. And again, just kudos. Do we have an idea of how much revenue the driving range is bringing in by itself? I know that, that was something else we took up some years ago, and they did a great job with that. They do a great job with Grill on the Hill, but do we have any idea how much that's enhancing our financial picture there?
Do we have a breakdown, Mr. Antonelli?
Through the chair to the council, I don't have a specific breakdown in front of me, but I think initially Commissioner Musi and I were looking at in that $100,000 range per year, and I'm pretty sure we're in or around that number on a yearly basis. The better the weather, the sooner we can open, the better we can do.
Yeah, doing a great job up there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So we have a motion to approve. All those in favor? Opposed, so ordered. We can do one more budget person if you want, or we can take a break. What's that? Take a break, or? Okay, so we'll recess and come back to budget in about a half hour or so. Okay, thanks. Okay, we're going to continue in our finance meeting, we're going over the budget. Mr. McGurthy, we are on transportation and mobility. You want to do an overview and introduce Mr. Raleigh? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you mentioned, in front of you, you have the next department, which is Transportation and Mobility. Commissioner Steve Raleigh is here representing the department. Transportation and Mobility has two segments. It's the department itself, which has about a $3.4 million appropriation, which is a 2.7% increase over prior year, primarily a result of COLAs that were approved, that we've included as part of the budget, a 3% COLA. The other component, however, is the Off-Street Parking Board, which used to be part of DPW, but with the creation of Transportation and Mobility, the Off-Street Parking Board was moved over to Transportation and Mobility a year and a half ago or so, a year ago. It's part of that budget. That has about a 12.6% increase in its budget, mainly related to increased parking meter operations and lot maintenance.
Wait a minute. Any questions? Kate, Councilor Toomey, followed by Councilor King, followed by Councilor Colorio.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I certainly know that there's a great deal of work that needs to be done in this department. I know that you're really working to change mobility and hopefully parking for the better. I know parking has been a big issue, especially in some of our neighborhoods that are downtown, as well as for some of our small business people in the main corridor, the main area. One of the things that I did want to do in the form of an order is request an update of where we are regarding a placard program for businesses who are dropping supplies off at their businesses downtown. I've heard from a number of people, as a matter of fact, one person I heard from today, that since they opened their business this year, they've ended up, I think, with something like $3,000 worth of tickets just dropping stuff off, you know, and then coming back out. And there was, I heard from a couple of people on Main Street, the same thing. And so being able to have a placard that says business owner, whatever the business is, and, you know, temporary, you know, pass, as long as they're there for, you know, 15, 20 minutes or whatever, giving them time to drop their supplies off, that would be a huge help for people, because it's hard. You're starting a business, you're struggling, and, you know, you're just trying to, you know, get by, and all of a sudden you come out, you've got an extra $35. I think he had 3 this week. And he had come right out too, so it was just a few minutes too late. And, you know, it was hard. I mean, the parking guys are working really hard to do the right thing too, because we want to move people along. It opens up mobility, opens up parking spaces for people who are going to use the business. So I understand that, but I do think we need to consider small business people who are the lifeblood of our community. And so if we could get that, I don't know if you have an answer to that now, or through you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Raleigh?
Through the chair. So I certainly agree that deliveries and particularly in the commercial zones are an important component of the parking system. One of the things that I think we really need to do is think about using the scarce curb space the most efficiently we can, and looking at flexible regulations, whether that's a placard, whether it's commercial zones that are only in place for a certain period of time and then change to another type of use when the demand shifts to that other use. So for instance, 2 or 3 hour parking in the evenings when restaurant use picks up. That's something we want to look at and think about how we use that valuable resource most efficiently.
Well, I hope that we can do that quickly, because I don't know how much these folks can afford to continue to pay. And it's not like they're staying there all day. They're just trying to drop equipment off and supplies at their business. So, you know, hopefully we can come up with something very soon. You know, and I do want to say that ADA issues, you know, I know that they continue to improve. There's still more to be done. And I do know that there's a number of walk signals that no longer have the audible sound on Main Street. You know, a number of people have mentioned that to me as well. But, you know, I also recognize that there's an awful lot of pieces here in this department, and I do want to congratulate you all for working on Green Streets, and that'll be nice to see that completed. That's really the only major concern that I have other than speeding, but that's a whole nother ballywick, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilor King?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wanted to start with a couple of comments. You know, I think that this particular department has gotten off to a pretty good start. You know, we sang the praises of the commissioner a couple weeks ago, and I talked a little bit about part of our job here is to continue to push, prod, and work with the administration to improve Worcester. And it's within that spirit I wanted to ask a couple of questions. I too have concerns regarding the ADA compliance. Have we done any sort of audit as it relates to that? And if we have, is there a cost analysis attached to that to bring us up to par? I think that we should be a model city. We should be number one in the country, quite frankly. But where are we at in regards to that?
Commissioner?
Through the chair, we have not done a what's called an ADA transition plan, but it's something that we've identified in our work program as needing to be done. So that would be a thorough audit of ADA accessibility conditions throughout the street network and all the sidewalks, crosswalks, bus stops, and that type of thing. And I agree, it's absolutely critical.
That's great. Mr. Chairman, I'd like for this body to request and stand for pushing the city forward to conduct an ADA audit. I think he also mentioned some sort of transition or transitory plan. But by way of a motion, I think that this body can send a message that we should be the #1 city for ADA compliance in the country. Also, as part of that motion, Mr. Chairman, that there's some sort of a cost analysis attached to that, so we can have a look at, you know, how we can incrementally improve accessibility for everybody across the city. In addition to that, Mr. Chairman, just wanted to acknowledge all the work that they're doing here. You know, you take a look through some of their paperwork. They're creating safe streets and public spaces. We've had reports on some of the changes that are coming forward. They're also participating in regional transportation planning and improving compliance with parking regulations. Now, I believe I had voted against us moving forward with parking meters across the city because I'm one of them old, I guess, Worcester curmudgeons who doesn't like to pay for parking. So, and then a lot of my constituents feel that way, and the enforceability and flexibility is important to me. And I wanted to ask, given that fact, you talk a little bit about expanded enforcement capacity, and you know, also I think it said that we expanded the parking enforcement staff into 10, I don't know what PCO stands for, but PCOs, and again, completed citywide installation of parking pay stations, which is something I don't know. But if you could speak a little bit to the enhanced capacity and how much revenue that has brought in through the chair.
Mr. Commissioner?
Through the chair to the councilor. So we have almost fully filled our parking control officer positions. We have 12 budgeted positions as well as 2 senior PCOs. And I believe when we started out, 5 of those positions were filled, and now we're up to both senior PCO positions, and 10 of the PCO positions are currently filled. So we're in much better shape than we have been. That's important because it allows us to expand enforcement outside of sort of the core daytime hours so that enforcement can start earlier and can continue later into the evening.
Yes.
And also can occur on Saturdays as well.
Oh, gosh, yes.
And I just wanted to add that I know that parking enforcement is something that draws a lot of attention and can be contentious, but really what we're trying to do is ensure public safety, and particularly in the business districts, ensure that there's that turnover of parking so that the customers have access to their businesses. That's really the two driving things behind parking enforcement.
Is there a revenue number that we have brought in over the past year, fiscal year or fiscal year? Either or.
Through the
calendar?
chair, as of March of this year, we're at about 1.4 million in parking tickets. I'm sorry,
And-
1.14.
Any idea of what we were the year prior to that? I'm just curious what the analysis is there.
Through the chair, last year at this time, we were 689,000.
Okay. And that's in a different part of the budget, right? Is that in like fees and all that? Where's is that recorded?
Through the chair, the revenues are at the beginning of the budget as we
Yeah.
kind of go through the various revenue streams coming in.
All right. Again, I have a little bit of trepidation as relates to that. I agree with the business aspect, but also a lot of the businesses that I've spoken to and the customers that frequent those businesses have equal concerns about having access to parking spaces. I know there's some great plans for Crompton Park, Endicott Street, and I have major concerns about changing the perpendicular parking to horizontal, even given the additional parking spaces that's going to be available over by the basketball courts. But parking, as I've talked about many times and have called for a strategic master plan, because we've seen no parking results in loss of green space, folks paving over their property and their green space to create parking spaces because there's nowhere else to go, not because they want to be, against the environment or what have you. Implement license plate reader technology. The measure here is number of license plate readers deployed. What is that all about?
Mr. Commissioner?
Through the chair, one of the technologies that the parking division had started implementing, and we're still working on getting this fully up and running, but is technology for the parking control officer's vehicle that allows them to determine if there's a violation without having to get out and walk and check each route. So as they drive down the street, it'll scan the license plate, and if you're in a metered zone, it can tell you if the meter has expired. So it increases the efficiency of the enforcement.
So how does that work with the actual meter? So they can't, I thought when I park and I do my thing, my license plate goes into the meter. So there's no access for the parking, whatever officer to the meter. It goes to they're gonna run my plate.
So when through the chair, when the reader reads the license plate, it communicates with the parking system. So those parking meters are transmitting data that can tell the equipment that say the stay has been overextended or that particular vehicle hasn't paid for a space.
So then what's the purpose then of the license plate reader?
So that allows the PCO to check, the parking control officer, to check the vehicles while they're driving down the street, so they can check a much greater extent of the street than they could if they had to get out and check all of the license plates individually.
And part of my lack of insight, but how do they do that now? Without the license reader?
They'll through the chair, they'll park the vehicle and they'll get out and they'll walk and they have handhelds that they use and they'll check each of the plates individually.
I'll just, on the record, just say, I have some concerns regarding any sort of license plate reader technology, and I'll leave it at that for now. What's being done in the department as it relates to efforts to improve processes in the department as it relates to DEI values and having that standardized in your department?
Mr. Commissioner?
Through the chair, I think I'll answer that in two ways. One is thinking about how we work with the community in general, and that's, I think, a central tenet of the department is really trying to consider the question of equity as we're planning our transportation network and implementing it. Thinking about communities that have been underserved in the past, what kinds of investments we've made in those neighborhoods, and recognizing that it's not a one-size-fits-all transportation system. There are folks who have a lot of different mobility needs, whether it's accessibility, whether it's access to automobiles, whether it's just wanting to have a healthy way to meet their transportation needs. So really trying to consider all of those aspects in our transportation decision making. From a personnel standpoint, I think it's important that we make it clear to prospective employees that we're a welcoming and inviting department, one that's doing a lot of interesting, important work, and that they would want to be part of.
All right, thank you. You know, I look forward to us onboarding the next Chief Diversity Officer soon. I want to talk a little bit about, and I appreciate your attention to this, about the safe streets. You know, one of the things mentioned in here is the speed bumps. You know, I'm of the opinion that all of our temporary, or whatever they call them, speed bumps should be made permanent. I would just like to order requesting that we get an idea of numbers. How much would that cost us? In those locations that have been identified and have had those temporary or piloting, however you term them, speed bumps. And I'm going to bring up something that I brought up many moons ago, you know, prior to the speed bump conversation, and also in concert with it. I think Councilor Bergman was one of the leaders on the speed bumps. That's around speed cushions, and I've talked about it going back with Ed Augustus for many years. And the difference in the speed cushion and the speed bumps is that there's cutouts in those speed bumps that allow for unimpeded passage by emergency vehicles. And a lot of different, I know I've talked on this floor before about being in Philadelphia where my brother lives, and that's where I first saw them 5 or 6 years ago, or 7 years ago. And they're often placed, not just in residential, but in, you know, specifically in places where there's more emergency responses. They're known as being really effective in impacting those things. I know I talked a little bit about this again with you last week, but this body actually, I think we had talked about this, and there was some sort of amendment many years ago. But is there a possibility for us to do that? I know when we're looking at the changes on Endicott, there was like a raised table and what have you, but I know when you think over by Doherty, off Highland Street, you have the big speed bumps, but there's no cuts in there where an emergency vehicle can pass through them. If you could just speak a little bit about our ability to include speed cushions as part of this. Through the chair.
Mr. Commissioner?
Through the chair, sure, I'd be happy to. And absolute agreement that this is an important year for us to think about and to start taking action on transitioning what has been a temporary speed hump program to a comprehensive permanent traffic calming program. And we've included in our budget funding to do that and a plan to do that. So looking forward to that work. In terms of the speed cushions, we actually have 2 different types of temporary speed humps we can use, and one is a speed cushion type, so we are testing those. We'll work with the fire department and other emergency responders to get feedback to see how those are working before we make any decisions about the types of installations to do with permanent speed humps.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to once again make a call that, by the way of a motion, that we take a look at and move forward with speed cushions that allow for fire trucks and other emergency vehicles in terms of their axles and their width to be able to traverse through speed humps, to get a report back on any cost analysis, either, you know, just kind of a ballpark for that. It's very important, you know, and again, a motion that we get the numbers on what it would cost. And I'm wondering, you know, is there any ARPA funding? I know there was infrastructure money and things of that nature. Is there ARPA funding that can go towards this stuff through the chair, the administration?
Mr. McGurthy, Mr. Manager?
Through the chair, I don't think it would be an eligible expense for ARPA funds, but it's something we could look at.
All right, thank you. You know, really appreciate this. And the last question, when it comes to enforcement, I'll be quite frank, as I have been in the past, particularly over there in Kelly Square area, where we have residents and businesses and folks competing for parking. You know, what's the short-term, mid-term, and long-term resolutions there? And also, you know, a number of the folks frequenting those businesses on Water Streets and the like have been ticketed, you know, and feel like they have to come out of, you know, wherever they're eating or, you know, drinking or whatever the case might be to move a vehicle. And I know when we first moved forward on this, the administration pitched that this was partially due to the ballpark coming, wanted to make sure that on game days, you know, the parking wasn't clogged up. So, you know, quite frankly, I'd love to have less enforcement on non-game days, but, you know, I'm not asking formally for that, I'm just making a comment. But if you could speak a little bit to what the former comments I just made through the chair to the administration. Short-term, mid-term, long-term planning for those competing parking priorities.
Mr. Commissioner?
Yeah, through the chair. So in terms of short-term, we have actually, and I'll speak to the Canal District specifically and Kelly Square, we have identified some changes that will be proposed and coming before the council shortly that involve trying to, as I had spoken about earlier, trying to establish more flexibility in the parking zones that are closest to Kelly Square, realizing that there are restaurants there that have takeout service, there's Grubhub or whatever other food delivery services. There are commercial deliveries that need to take place. So we really need to prioritize those spaces that are closest to Kelly Square with flexibility to accommodate all of those uses. We've also, as you had noted, the initial plan in the Canal District was largely to go to a 2-hour parking limit throughout the district, and that was to discourage patrons who are using the ballpark from using the on-street parking and reserving that for business and restaurant patrons. And I think that still needs to be a major component of it. It's really the one tool we have to keep ballpark patrons from utilizing that on-street parking or taking the supply of it. But we have recognized that particularly as we get a little further from the ballpark in the district, there are some opportunities for some longer-term on-street parking, so that's going to be part of the proposal as well. In the midterm, we've identified some changes that we can incorporate in future street resurfacing and street improvement projects to create a few additional on-street spaces. There's not a lot of curb space out there, so we're not going to suddenly, you know, be able to identify a huge increase in the amount of parking, but where we can carve out additional spaces, I think it's important to do so where there is a demonstrated high demand like that. And then in the long term, I think it's really about building a multimodal transportation network. So we've got lots of people who are moving downtown, a lot of activity. More and more trips are going to be viable, and actually the preferred mode will become walking, biking, other forms of transportation that we're really just getting to know about and understand, like the scooters you see and things like that. So I think that's, you know, in a sort of a short version, what we're looking at short-term, midterm, and longer term.
Through the chair to the administration, I know that, you know, when I go to Fenway, I go to the ballpark out there, that there's signage specific to game days and parking hours and restrictions on those game days. Is that something that we're looking into through the chair? Are you aware of that type of signage? Have you looked into that in the past?
Mr. Commissioner?
Through the chair, I am aware of the signage. I've noticed that as well around the Fenway area. It's something we could look into. It's really difficult to enforce that, so I do have some concerns about our ability to enforce, in particular, game day restrictions, but it's something that we could certainly take a look at, and it's consistent with what I was describing in terms of wanting to introduce flexibility for, food delivery zones, commercial zones, and those sorts of things.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, way of an order, I'd like a report back on the feasibility of that sort of signage that they have out in Fenway. I've been meaning to do that for quite some time, but this is a great opportunity. And also, in terms of budget, how much that would cost us. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I thought we had signage that said game day. No, out there? We have something that says that. No, nothing, huh?
I
thought
saw a
maybe
little
it's on-
sticker on them for the first time the other day, but I'm talking about the actual signage. It's
yeah.
like a little sticker that I just saw on
Yeah, I
the
just was
meter.
wondering.
It's like this big.
Yeah, because I think in the parking meters, it doesn't say game day on them, and,
Mr. Chair, we have, I believe we have some stickers in the Canal District that discourage game day parking
Yeah.
that were placed on certain meters. And then there's some parking on Green Island Boulevard that actually goes to a game day pricing, so it's sort of the opposite of what I believe Councilor
Okay.
King was speaking about.
okay, we have Councilor Corio.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a couple points here. Being the chair of parking and traffic, we work very close together with transportation and mobility. And one of the things that I've noticed since the creation of this department, thank you, Mr. Manager, for putting it forward, we've been able to, as a committee, we've been able to take more items and handle them each month, which then reflects on our constituents who have wait months and months to have their item heard. So with the creation of this committee, there's more consistency, there's more support, and I find that the meetings, even though they're long, we get really a lot done, and I'm really grateful for that. So one of the things you mentioned in your objective 2 is traffic studies. Occasionally, we put forward, an item to have a traffic study done. Have you seen, through the chair, have you seen more of requests for traffic studies? And how many traffic studies do we have now pending? Would you say approximately how many, through the chair, to Mr. Raleigh?
Mr. Commissioner?
Through the chair, it in part would depend on how we define a traffic study, but certainly one of the things that we've built into the capacity of the department is the ability to conduct traffic studies internally that we previously did not have the capacity to do. So for instance, I believe for the last Traffic and Parking Committee meeting, they were relatively small studies, but we conducted around a dozen studies for that meeting, and we have another, I would say, 6 or so for the upcoming meeting. So we're completing studies like warrant analyses for stop signs or traffic signals, studies of speed and traffic conditions that we were previously not able to do in-house. We are now doing in-house, and that's really increased our capacity to be able to look at things in a more quantitative way than we had previously.
So on that point, I'll just make a comment there. You're absolutely right on that, and I just want to say that, we did Montville Area Historical District, and you came up with a traffic study. It was very intense and detailed, and it was great. And usually, that would, if we asked for a traffic study, and it would take months upon months to even get the request acknowledged, never mind the study done. So having them done in-house has been tremendously helpful for us to get an item, to get it resolved, and then to move on to something else. Because the worst thing in my committee is having someone say to me, I've been coming here for 6, 10, 20 years, the same thing, the area, the speeding, the whatever, and nothing gets done. Now I feel in the last year or so, we've been getting more and more done in my committee, and I have to say that's partly due to the collaboration or the support from your department, Mr. Raleigh. So one of the things too is on, I know myself and my colleagues, Councilor Rivera, had asked for a temporary parking program for health workers. And we talked about that because people had to run into a house, give medical attention, a home health aid or something, they were parking in the residential parking. And we had asked if there could be some kind of a sticker, placket, something being created, wondering if that is in the works. Through the chair to Mr. Raleigh.
Mr. Commissioner?
Through the chair, as I just confirm, as I understood the request, that's specific to residential parking zones where the home health care workers otherwise wouldn't be able to park. Is that correct? Do I understand that correctly?
Well, I'd have to check with the order that we put through, but I think we cited, there was one particular constituent that really kind of triggered the whole thing with us, is that they were having their home health care was coming in. It's a residential parking. They had, equipment. They had to get parked close to the person's house, and they would park in residential, and they would come back, and they would have a ticket. So that was really, but I'm not really 100% sure of how we wrote that item, but I was wondering if that was in the works.
Through the chair, so we are comprehensively looking at the residential parking program, and after just talking about how we have additional in-house capacity, there are still some areas where it warrants bringing in some outside expertise who's worked on these types of programs throughout the region and throughout the country. So we are doing that. We're bringing a consultant in to help us really understand how we can revamp that program to, again, meet needs like that, but also work more effectively for the residents who rely on it on a daily basis.
Okay, that's great. And through the chair, you talk about the expand of enforcement capacity. When we're talking about enforcement, are we talking, people that are following through with tickets, giving tickets to people? Or are we talking about police enforcement when it comes to making sure that people aren't going through stop signs or, not speeding on a street? Because I do know that in the police department, if I'm not mistaken, that program has not been expanded. There's not more police officers on the street in the enforcement department. Is that true? Through the chair to the city manager.
Mr. Manager?
Through the chair to the councilor. We initially, about a year, if not 2 years ago, we expanded the traffic division. We added some officers in that. But the need has been great in terms of the need that we've had in our neighborhoods, especially around speeding. One of the things that we do have is that's been helpful is I think we have those kind of like speed detectors that we kind of oftentimes move around the city, but we don't have too many of those. We only have, I believe, 2 or 3 of those. So I know there's been a request from other councilors to add additional. But this enforcement, I think, is more so for the parking purposes, not for any violations of driving, mobile. Those are more on the police departments. But this enforcement capacity is more on the ticketing end of violations related to parking.
Thank you. And the reason I mention that is because when most of the items we handle in traffic and parking are speeding. And when then we try to think of traffic calming measures, ways to reduce speeding, have safe streets, and there's a lot of different variables go into that. And one of the partners in that is the police. We rely on them to go up to the street to put a monitor on to check the speeding. And it just seems like I didn't know if we had some kind of different plan to implement other things in this department, or if this was just the parking enforcement, and that I was reading, right, through the chair?
Mr. Commissioner?
Through the chair, that's correct. So, and as the manager stated, the specific to the transportation and mobility enforcement capacity, that's strictly related to parking. But I will say that in terms of working with our partners at the police department on enforcement, our approach, or I think what our department, how we can contribute to this is through good design, which obviously we're trying to do, and we've created or proposed programs in the upcoming budget that will give us the capacity really for the first time to start implementing some of these spot traffic calming treatments that we've talked about in Traffic and Parking Committee, moving forward. So I think that's going to be a really valuable resource so that we're attacking this from sort of multiple directions. And then the other piece I wanted to mention too is that with the expansion of our data analysis and analytical capacity, we have a much better understanding of the degree to which speeding's a problem and where it's occurring, so we know where to target improvements.
And my last question is, two parts to this question. One is, it appears to me that you have 21 of the 24 positions filled. That's great. Waiting to get in full capacity there. But talk about traffic calming measures. Is there anything new and exciting in that development? I know some of the recommendations that you've put forward have been creative, but could you speak to some of the things that you are looking towards maybe incorporating in some of the streets that are concerns? Grove Street, Forest Street, Middle Street, all those streets. Through the chair to Mr. Raleigh.
Commissioner.
Through the chair to the counselor. So we're really attacking this in a variety of different ways depending on the opportunity that's available. So you had just mentioned several streets that are slated for reconstruction or resurfacing projects, and as we had talked about a few weeks ago here before the council, we're implementing a process now to look at design improvements that are specifically targeted toward reducing speeding and slowing traffic that is going too fast, as well as creating safe spaces for all users, so pedestrians, bicyclists, folks who may need assistance in their mobility, really thinking about creating spaces that are comfortable and safe for them to use and incorporating those into the resurfacing and reconstruction projects. So that's kind of the larger end of the scale. We have also proposed in the budget a complete streets improvements specific line item, which will allow us to do things like implement permanent traffic calming solutions rather than just rely on the temporary speed hump program. So the evolution that I spoke to earlier in response to Councilor King's question. So looking at things like permanent speed humps, neighborhood traffic circles. There's all sorts of both horizontal alignment techniques that can be employed relatively inexpensively and on a local level. So I think that's really going to expand the toolkit we have available to us. One of the things that I've noticed in the year that I've been working with the Traffic and Parking Committee is that oftentimes we'll get a request for some sort of specific improvement. And as we go back and study that, we realize there's a problem there, but we haven't historically had the right tool available to us. For instance, we might know that there's a need for a pedestrian crossing, but just striping a crosswalk isn't going to be a safe solution there. There needs to be other components to that to make it safe. So those are the types of programs that we're proposing in this year's budget.
So just one of my comments, when I was at the meeting for the redesign of Endicott Street, you had mentioned through the chair, Mr. Raleigh, some kind of a, elevated, not elevated crosswalk, but it was almost like some kind of elevation where people would, I thought that was very fascinating, not to bore people, but I thought, boy, was that kind of a cool thing to think of, to do. That's traffic calming, and it's a part of the redesign, and hopefully we'll see more of those in different areas where we have, the high traffic. But if you could just explain that, and that will be my final question, I promise, through the chair.
Mr. Commissioner?
Through the chair, sure, I'd be happy to. And I'm glad that others find this fascinating too. So the proposal there is for either what's sometimes referred to as a raised intersection or a tabled intersection.
Yeah.
And essentially the entire intersection gets raised about 6 to 8 inches, and it functions as a gradual speed hump approaching the intersection. So it forces traffic to slow as they're approaching the intersection before they get to the crosswalk, creates a safe environment for pedestrians, And then it also helps with the accessibility at the intersection because you're no longer limited to using, if you're in a wheelchair or even have a stroller or a cane or anything else, you're no longer limited to that fairly constrained ADA ramp, but now the whole intersection's at the same grade as the sidewalk, and so it really improves the convenience for someone who's looking to cross as well.
Thank you. I appreciate all the answers.
Thank you. We have Councilor Bergman, followed by Councilor Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through the chair to Mr. Raleigh, first of all, I just want to congratulate you and your staff for what I think has been a very successful debut of your department. I know it was needed, and I want to congratulate the manager as well for appreciating the need for the department. And I know you're just getting off the ground, but you're certainly getting off the ground and running. I just have a few questions for topics that interest me a lot that are part of the budget or not part of the budget, and I guess my questions are going to relate to if they're not part of the budget, why aren't they? Traffic calming measures is something that is certainly a term that we've all become very familiar with, certainly in my time on the council, that in my time on traffic and parking subcommittee, that's something that we always hear more of a need for. To me, one of the goals of your department is to kind of reduce traffic-related issues. And one of the ways I think we reduce traffic-related issues is somehow finding a way to make the WRTA more successful. And we have an excellent representative on the WRTA and former colleague, Councilor Rosen. But at the same time, I don't know if there's a role, I hope there is, for your department to give some guidance to the WRTA as far as what routes might be best for them to consider using. It's going to be a new executive director, we've been told, and the timing couldn't be more than perfect for you to communicate with whoever that person is, because, again, the more people we get off the street and put them on buses, the less traffic congestion, less parking issues, so on and so forth. So through the chair to Mr. Raleigh, can you foresee a role for your department working with the WRTA to provide some sort of guidance?
Through the chair. I do think there are a number of roles the city can play in our department specifically, and we are actually actively working both with the WRTA and through our own planning efforts to do that. So let me just briefly describe some of those. The department, working with our partners in the Department of Sustainability and Resilience, has recently launched a long-range transportation plan. It's called the Worcester Mobility Action Plan. It's brand new, so you probably haven't heard a lot about it yet, but there'll be a lot of publicity around that this summer. And that's really taking the higher level concepts developed through the Now Next long-range plan that is a citywide all topics plan, and drilling down and looking at transportation specifically. So one of the key things we want to do in that plan is think about the transit network, how it's working, in what areas it's working well, what areas need improvement, and what roles the city can play in doing that. So some of the roles the city might be able to play are, we certainly have important roles in ensuring safe and accessible access to transit stops. And that's not just getting to the transit stop, but also getting to the one on the opposite side of the street, which is critical for bus riders. We can help in operations in terms of looking at technologies like transit signal priority, which is something that we've been actively talking with WRTA, as well as Mass DOT and the Central Massachusetts Regional Planning Commission to look at testing some corridors here. And the idea behind signal transit priority isn't like a preemption that you see an emergency vehicle get. It's just a little bit of an advantage that a bus gets, but over the course of a route can really make a big difference in terms of the efficiency of that route and staying on schedule. So I do think there are some significant roles we can play, even though we're a separate and independent agency from the WRTA.
I appreciate the answer, and through the chair, my comment back is that, we said, my colleagues, Councilor Merrill Carlson, Councilor Nguyen, we sit on that subcommittee, and we don't really get the answers back as far as what routes are you prioritizing and what are you basing those priorities on. I think your department can be helpful in seeing where the congestion is, where the businesses are, and maybe giving the WRTA guidance that, traffic isn't moving along this corridor, there are businesses here. What are your bus routes? How often do they run? Switching to another, I'm going to try to be quick with 2 or 3 subjects. Switching to another subject that's similar, myself and many of my colleagues, almost probably all my colleagues, have discussed synchronized lights before. And it seems to me that some of the issues we have in the side streets are born out of the frustration people have on the main roads, and they're trying to find shortcuts because they're stopping at periodic red lights. We talk a lot about environmental friendly orders, and to me it seems sensible, but perhaps it's not cost efficient, to try a pilot program on a route in the city that maybe touches upon as many districts as possible. And what that route is, I don't know at this moment, but I certainly know that your department can find it, where we test pilot a synchronized lighting system, such as what they have in New York City, where if you got greens, you got greens. If you got reds, you got reds. It's certainly better for the environment. It's better for the timing of people that are trying to get from point A to point B. I think it would take them from trying to off the side streets because they'd have a straight shot at wherever they're going. So through the chair to Mr. Raleigh, do you envision any sort of opportunity to pilot such a program in the future?
Through the chair, we're certainly always looking at ways to operate the traffic signal system as efficiently as possible. We've upgraded the technology in a number of corridors. So, for example, when the Main Street project was completed, that's all new technology. All of those traffic signals communicate with each other and can inform the timing of each individual signal based on the traffic conditions at their intersection. So that's a significant improvement over some of the older technology we have. Similarly, on future projects that are under development now, for instance, the Chandler Street project, those signals are not in any way in communication with one another today, which anyone who drives down the streets probably noticed. Once that project's completed, they will all be in coordination as well. So we're certainly looking to operate the system as efficiently as possible and upgrading the equipment to do so as we have the opportunities. One thing I did want to note is we have initiated a complete inventory of our traffic signal system, so we understand the conditions and the capabilities of that system. One of the earlier comments we heard today was that a number of the push button audible sensors aren't working anymore. That's something we'll learn through that effort.
I appreciate that. One last question, and then one final comment. With respect to, I'm going to call these misaligned intersections. I'm sure through the chair, Mr. Raleigh has a much more technical term. But just off the top of my head, Plantation and Belmont Street, coming off Plantation, it's almost impossible not to get an accident merging, especially left onto Belmont. Southbridge and Cambridge, over by where Culpepper's is. Oh my God. You hit that intersection, no matter whether you've got the green light or not, you're taking your life in your own hands. Another one that I'm familiar with is Mill and Chandler, coming from Mill, from the airport, towards Chandler, towards Tennis Square. So when I call them misaligned, there's something amiss about the way those streets are lined. Again, I'm not the expert, and I'm sure I'm only giving you the tip of the iceberg of a lot of streets, and they probably were designed 100+ years ago. I get it, but my question really through the chair to you, Mr. Raleigh, is there anything we could do to identify the most problematic ones and come up with strategies? And I'm sure it's very costly, but they are dangerous, and all of us are aware of them. So is there anything on the horizon to take a look at what we can do to make those safer?
Mr. Raleigh?
Through the chair, yeah, that's absolutely something we'll be looking at through the mobility action plan that I discussed earlier, both in terms of identifying where crashes are occurring at higher rates than you would expect otherwise, as well as looking at the geometry of intersections. There are a number of those. The solutions are different depending on the circumstances. Sometimes they're very constrained situations, and there's not really an opportunity to change their geometric conditions. So you have to look at the way you allocate the lanes as well as time the signals to try to address that. Others, intersections meet at odd angles, which can be a very dangerous situation. You mentioned Mill and Chandler. That's an intersection that through a project we're developing through the Regional Transportation Improvement Program will be reconfigured and the safety greatly improved there. So different solutions for different locations, but something that's definitely on our radar.
I appreciate it. My last comment is I'm very glad and feel very good about the fact that the speed hump program, which all of us remember, kind of went nowhere for a while, and then started, and it's become very popular, and I'm very happy that it's being looked at as more of a permanent solution. There was a caller that called in, I think the last meeting, said that they weren't very effective, but I can share with all my colleagues, and I'm sure they can share back with me, that we continue to get people that ask that they be put on their streets. I know Chairperson Calerio is probably inundated with requests, and from what you're saying, Mr. Raleigh, it sounds like they have been very effective. I'm not saying that they're the only tool in the toolbox, but the fact that they're going to go from 2 in a district to many more, and then from semi-permanent to permanent, is proof to me that that all of our efforts to get those going have helped with traffic calming measures. So thank you for considering that and making those permanent as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councilmember Carlson?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, through you to Mr. Raleigh, our resident parking permit program has always been based on colleges and hospitals. So I think, as we know, that with all of the economic development that's taken place in the city, and I'll use the Canal District as an example, as well as I'll use the downtown area, which is now, quite honestly, another neighborhood that is growing. So we've had resident parking permits for folks who lived in areas that were impacted by the hospitals and colleges, but have we as a city taken a look at the impact on our residents by virtue of what's taken place in, for example, the Canal District? There is residents who live down there that at the time that their buildings were rehab down there and they rented them, there was no issue with parking. They could park anywhere. We've now created a situation for them in that particular area, as well as in the downtown area, that there's no longer any place for people to park unless they're paying for parking, which is creating a financial hardship, as well as where is it that they do park, because of all of the different businesses that are in the area. So that's question one. Question two, Mr. Chairman, through you to Mr. Raleigh, and I know that you were part of some of the discussions that took place in the Canal District, and we talked about creating a list of parking spaces that were available, because in the last meeting that we were at, the numbers were thrown around about how many parking spaces were available. And there was talk about us creating a list, working with the businesses, where those parking spaces were, and were they available to the different businesses down in the Canal District. Because we continue to talk about the businesses in, whether it's the Canal District, and quite frankly, right on the beginning of Pleasant Street. You heard tonight about the individual who continues to get parking tickets on a ongoing basis. So that's, I believe, 3 questions. If you could address, is there anything that we've done since that last meeting, which was quite some time ago, in the Canal District? But I also think that the Main Street connects with what is going on in the Canal District. But I also don't want us just to think about that, but as we think about some of the side streets in some of our neighborhoods, where we do have now schools that have lots of different activities and games, and I know Councilor King mentioned Merrifield Street, whether it was last week or a couple of weeks ago, but we continue to have issues with our residents having a place to park. So is there any thought about expanding the residential parking program, what the criteria is?
Mr. Commissioner?
Through the chair, I'll start with the residential parking program question. I think that's certainly something we can and should look at as we study it with the consultant that I had mentioned we're bringing on, looking at the criteria for establishing those. There is, I want to be candid though, there is a real challenge that the amount of curb space we have is kind of the amount of curb space we have. So it's really a question of how do you allocate that fairly equitably and in a way that supports the various land uses. And traditionally, residential parking zones have typically been implemented where there is a major institutional use nearby, but that's certainly something that I think we should have the consultant advise us on and look at as well. In terms of changes that have been made or additional things that have been done with regard to the Canal District in particular, I mentioned previously we have an item coming before the council that sort of summarizes the governmental actions. So some changes in regulations being proposed in the vicinity of Kelly Square, some conversion of 2-hour parking to long-term parking up toward Temple Street, which we think will be of particularly of benefit to the residents in that area that you had mentioned were in particular, I think, impacted in a very quick fashion when that neighborhood saw a lot of change over a short period of time. So those are where we've really focused.
Thank you. And my last comment is on the speed hump program. That was a program that certainly was successful in the pilot program, and I know you and I have had a very long discussion about that and how that all played out, which has been really, in my opinion, in my district, it's really been successful on the streets that we've put them on. And I know we've talked about that rolling this out for some additional streets. I guess my comment on that is I think that's great, but I don't want us to go through another year that we don't add additional speed humps, because the issue for those of us who are district councilors is that we were told that we had 4 additional streets and those were approved, and yet they didn't take place last year. So certainly no fault of yours by any means, but sort of got lost in the system. So we made commitments, but we haven't fulfilled those commitments. And like I said, you and I had the conversation, and we're looking to get there to do these, but I just can't stress enough how much those speed humps have helped with traffic calming measures, at least for me and in my district, for the people who live on those streets, whether their kids are in the road or they're walking their dogs, or quite frankly, people just speeding. They've made a huge impact. So I hopefully look forward to seeing those other 4 streets in my district having those speed humps, and look forward to having some additional ones too, hopefully. Thank you. And quite honestly, to the administration and to you, you've made a huge impact in this city in your short term in this role. So just wanted to share my appreciation for what you've done. There's many of intersections that we've talked about on this council, for me, for 8 years. And honestly, we're finally dealing with them. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So we have a motion to approve.
Chairman?
Council Russell?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Raleigh and I are pen pals, if I think that's the best way to put it, and communication over and over again, so I don't have to relive all the conversations I've had with them over the last year and over the last few weeks. But what I'm going to do is ask a couple of quick budgetary questions, because that's what we're here for. Consultant services, 225 last year, 225 this year. What are we spending those consulting services on?
Mr. Raleigh?
Through the chair, so there's a variety of efforts we use consulting services for. One is the residential parking program that I had mentioned previously. The other is for various traffic studies that come up over the course of the year that are beyond the capacity that the staff have developed internally. So I think one of the things we've been able to do with the department is recognizing that there's a lot of unmet need out there in terms of analyzing and improving our transportation system. So rather than trying to convert what was previously completely move away from using consultants, we're trying to reprioritize that to use them for studies that specific expertise or complexity that we won't be able to develop in-house. And that allows us to refocus our efforts on the things that we can do in-house, like the intersection studies and speed studies and things like
Mr.
that.
Chairman, through you, but did we spend the 225 last year?
No, Mr. McGriffy, or? Hang on.
If not, they could give me a report later if they don't know off the top.
Through the chair, I'd certainly be happy to provide a report on that if that would.
Mr. Chairman, the other question I have is where are the speed humps or speed bumps here in the budget? Are they under maintenance, repair, equipment at 381, or are they someplace else?
Mr. Commissioner?
Through the chair, they are a line item in the capital budget.
Oh, so they're not even on this?
Through the chair, they're not on the OM budget, but they're, and I'll look to the CFO to confirm, but they're, the speed humps are on the capital improvement program.
Okay, so, Mr. Chairman.
Through the chair, they're part of the capital outlay budget.
Okay, that's to purchase them, I presume, right? Or is it to install them and pull them
To
back?
purchase, exactly.
Okay, so how about is that under maintenance of repair of equipment to install and pull them up when it starts snowing, or is that somewhere? I'm just trying to get an idea of where that, what's in that maintenance, repair and equipment. And since I'm at it, at the same thing, I'll ask this, another question at the same time. And we're spending $75,000 in electricity. What's that for? I mean, obviously it's for electricity, but is it all electric vehicles? Is it, what are we spending $75,000 in electricity for one department?
Commissioner?
Through the chair, sorry, I'll try to capture the ones that I heard. But the maintenance repair of equipment is essentially traffic signal maintenance.
Okay.
Electricity is largely traffic signals as well, but that's also the account that we pay for our building's electricity, which is obviously a small share of that.
Okay.
And then the speed hump line item, it pays for not only the purchase of them, but also the installation, transport, and then their removal at the end of the season. When we start looking at permanent installations, that's the new traffic calming budget that's proposed. So the 250 is really focused on procuring additional temporary speed humps, getting those installed, having those removed at the end of the season. And then as we transition those to permanent improvements, we'll be utilizing the proposed traffic calming.
So, Mr. Chairman, so the electricity for all the traffic lights, or is it 75,000?
That's, through the chair, that's correct.
And where was that in previous years? Is it Public Works?
Mr. McGriffy?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Through the chair, if I could just add, the question you asked about consulting to date was about $207,000 to date for FY23.
To install and to take out?
I'm sorry.
Or to?
$207,000 has been expended to date of the consulting budget, which was $225 for the year.
Okay. And how much was taking the speed humps up and back?
Oh, the commissioner clarified that's part of the cost of the speed bump, is the the purchase, the installation, and the removal.
It's included.
Yep.
Okay. Motion is to approve. Roll call.
Counselor Bergman?
Yes.
Counselor Calorio?
Yes.
Counselor Agia?
Yes.
Counselor King? Counselor Carlson? Counselor Nguyen?
Yes.
Counselor Rivera?
Yes.
Counselor Rose?
Yes.
Counselor Russell?
Yes.
Counselor Toomey?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty.
Yes. Okay. We have economic development up next. Mr. McGurthy, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As mentioned, the next department is Economic Development with Chief Development Officer Peter Dunn and Head of the Mass Hire Career Center, Janice Weeks. Economic Development has 4 separate divisions, funding divisions underneath it. First is the broad Department of Economic Development, which is about a $2.6 million appropriation, which is about a 26% increase caused by, as the city manager spoke at the beginning of the meeting, the transfer in of the Cultural Development Division, which had been located in the city manager's office for the last few years, as well as the increase of a position for the Community Preservation Act, as well as COLAs related to the department. Also within our within economic development is the Worcester Redevelopment Authority in Union Station. It's about a $1.8 million budget, of which $528,000 is tax levy, same as last year, no increase year over year. And then the remaining 2 sections within economic development are the Mass Hire Central Region Workforce Investment Board and the Mass Hire Central Career Center. The Mass Hire Central Career Center is fully state and federal funded. The Mass Hire Central Region Workforce Investment Board includes a $200,000 tax levy contribution related to the Worcester Jobs Fund.
Okay. Motion to approve? Counselor, what's that? Motion to approve? Okay, we can do that if you like. Roll call?
Counselor Bergman?
Yes.
Counselor Calorio?
Yes.
Counselor Agia?
Yes.
Counselor King?
Yes.
Counselor Merrill Carlson? Counselor Nguyen?
Yes.
Counselor Rivera?
Yes.
Counselor Rose?
Yes.
Counselor Russell?
Yes.
Counselor Toomey?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty.
Yes. Okay. That brings us to sustainability and resilience.
What does that mean? Oops, sorry.
Who's up? Mr. McGurthy?
Mr. Chairman, the next department is Sustainability and Resilience. We're just looking for Commissioner John Odell, Chief Sustainability Officer John Odell. The recommended appropriation is $527,000, which is a 1.4% increase over FY23. The main funding changes this year is the increase of 1 administrative support position. When the department was created, there was no administrative support, so this will allow for efficiencies in the department since senior staff were carrying out administrative work. It includes a regrade and some COLAs for a total of 8 positions within the department.
Okay. I think we've, people thought we'd be here another half hour, I think, so we'll give them a minute to come. Is Inspection Services here? We can do one or the other. Yeah, all right, that's what I thought.
Here he comes.
Right here, there we go. Mr. Odell, come on in and join us. Okay, another important department. And any questions? Councilor Rose? Motion to approve? Okay.
Motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Roll call.
Counselor Bergman?
Yes.
Counselor Calorio?
Yes.
Counselor Agia?
Yes.
Counselor King?
Yes.
Counselor Merrill Carlson? Counselor Nguyen?
Yes.
Counselor Rivera?
Yes.
Counselor Rose?
Yes.
Counselor Russell?
Yes.
Counselor Toomey?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty.
Yes. Okay. Okay, so emergency communications we put first on the agenda for the next meeting. And we have inspectional services, which he's already on his way down the hall here. Well, he's downstairs, on his way up. Mr. O'Dowd, take a sandwich on the way home at this point.
You got it.
So what's he gotta do, wait for?
Okay. Mr. McGurty, you just want to give us a slowed version of the recap?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. The next department is inspectional services. Commissioner Chris Spencer will be joining. The recommended appropriation for inspectional services is $4,934,362, which is an increase of 7% over the FY23 budget. The major funding changes is the transfer of the License Commission from Economic Development over to Inspectional Services in order to take advantage of the efficiencies of the permitting system located within one building and the use of the View Permit software, as well as COLAs that were assigned based on the 3% proposal within the budget. So it's a total of 73 positions, which is a +1 compared to the prior year, representing the License Commission. We're happy to entertain no questions.
With that, counsel? Motion to approve? Okay. Roll call.
Council Bergman?
Yes.
Council Caloria?
Yes.
Council Agia? Council King?
Yes.
Council Member Carlson?
Yes.
Council Nguyen?
Yes.
Council Rivera?
Yes.
Council Rose?
Yes.
Council Russell?
Yes.
Council Toomey?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty.
Yes. So the law number 9, that's, we're going to hold that for the next meeting. That's the approval of the budget. Then also we're going to take a roll call, the recess from finance, then go into the city council meeting.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, so we'll
Two
adjourn
separate-
finance and then we'll come back.
Two separate?
Yep.
I was trying to save you time. Okay, recess from finance, roll call.
Council Bergman?
Yes.
Council Caloria?
Yes.
Council Agia? Council King?
Yes.
Council Member Carlson?
Yes.
Council Nguyen?
Yes.
Council Rivera?
Yes.
Council Rose?
Yes.
Council Russell?
Yes.
Council Toomey?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty.
Yes, the